What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another amazing Naruto story. What if Naruto reincarnated as Nathaniel Queen? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. October 10, 1986. Starling City General. Billionaire Robert Queen paced the hallway of the hospital as his wife Moira screamed in pain from childbirth. What was I thinking? We weren't ready for another child after Oliver. Robert thought, shaking his head before a smile came upon his face. I'll love this child all the same. Robert stopped pacing when he heard the cry of a newborn, just as a nurse walked put smiling at him. Congratulations Mr. Queen, it's a boy. Robert smiled brightly as he was led into the room, to see his beautiful wife smiling down at a bundle. Moira? Robert, he's so beautiful. Moira said, allowing Robert to see their baby, who looked around the room, his deep blue eyes holding some intelligence in them which surprised Robert. Robert looked back down to his child, who grabbed his finger with a surprisingly strong grip. So Mr. and Mrs. Queen, have you decided on a name? The nurse asked, just as thunderstruck, reminding them of the storm outside, one of the worst Starling City has ever had. Nathaniel, Moira said. His name will be Nathaniel Queen. Welcome to the family, son. Robert said, holding his baby and smiling down at him before he looked to his wife, smiling brightly when the baby smiled at him. 26 years later. Lian Yu. On an remote island known as Lian Yu or Purgatory, all was silent while in a campsite a man wearing a green hood, with dirty blonde locks reaching down to his shoulders, cooked his fish, before he paused and looked up. A ship? A raspy male voice said. Then, in a show of speed impossible for normal human, the man rushed forward before he kicked the side of a tree and jumped to a branch. He then began to run through the trees, his form blurring as he sped forward before he came through the brush and landed on a small mountain top, looking over the ocean to see a small fisher ship close by before he lit a burning arrow and shot it at the pyre on the beach, causing it to erupt in an inferno, catching the attention of the fisherman, who decided to investigate, causing the man to smirk before he jumped forward to meet the fishermen. My name is Nathaniel Queen. For 5 long years I've been suffering in hell, but now the time has come for me to return to Starling. It is now time to remove those that are poisoning my city. To do this, I must become the fire that burns away the infestation. I must become something else. 5 days later. Starling City. Nathaniel Queen is alive. The Starling City resident was found by fishermen in the North China Sea 5 days ago. 5 years after he was presumed dead following the accident at sea which claimed the Queen's Gambit. Queen was a tabloid presence and fixture on the club scene. Queen is the son of Starling City billionaire Robert Queen, who was also on board but now officially confirmed as deceased. The news reporter said. Hospital. Moira Queen stood in the hallway looking at her baby boy. As he stood at the window watching the city, his hair was cut back in its natural spiky golden blonde style. 40% of his body is covered in scars tissue. He also has second-degree burns on his back and arms. His mental state, though, is what you should worry about. It's best to prepare yourself, Moira. The Nathan you lost might not be the one they found. A doctor said. Moira turned to look at him. Has he said anything? She asked. Nothing. The doctor said, causing Moira to nod before she entered. Nathan? Moira asked before Nathan turned to face her. Hi, Mom. Nathan said softly, walking over as she teared up. Oh, my beautiful boy. Moira cried before she and Nathan embraced, with Nathan smiling softly as a tear streamed from his eye, listening to Moira sob as she kissed his cheek. Morning. Nathan, dressed in a long-sleeve black shirt, black slim-fit Levi jeans and Nike blazers, walked into his home after his mother. Your room is exactly as you left it. I didn't have the heart to change a thing, Moira said, looking to Nathan, who smiled at her before he saw a picture of Oliver and Robert, causing him to frown, which Moira noticed sadly. Nathaniel. Nathan looked over to see a bald African-American man in a suit walk over. Damn good to see you. Nathan looked at the man before he looked to Moira, who looked a bit nervous. Looking back to the man, he asked, Who are you? It's Walter. Walter Steele. Walter said. You remember Walter? Your father's friend from the company. Moira said, causing Nathan to nod slowly in recognition before he saw a maid in the threshold and smiled, walking over. It's good to see you, Raisa. Nathan said as the maid took his hands into her own with a bright smile. Welcome home, Mr. Queen. Raisa said, giggling when his eyebrow twitched. I see you still hate formalities. Nathan nodded and tried to find the right words but settled for, it's a work in progress. He said, causing her to smile before she looked to Moira. Tommy called. He wants to join you for dinner. Raisa said. Wonderful. Moira nodded while a door closing caused Nathan to look up toward the stairs and walk over to the steps. Nate? Did you hear that? Nathan remained silent as a teenage girl appeared at the top of the stairs. Hey, Thea. Nathan said. The girl began to tear up as she came down the stairs. I knew it. I knew you were alive. She said, jumping into his arms as he hugged her tightly. I missed you so much. She sniffled. I thought about you every single day. Nathan said, causing her to tighten her arms around him. Later, Nathan just got out of the shower, and walked to his mirror and dragged his hand across it, wiping the fog away, allowing him to see himself, along with the scars that littered his upper body. On his left pectoral was the symbol of a red Chinese dragon inside of a red circle. On his upper back, left side, was another dragon tattoo, Shadow's tattoo, 1. Later, Nathan was now looking at a picture of his dad. He had a solemn look on his face, before he looked up when his best friend Tommy walked in. What did I tell you? Yachts suck, Tommy said, causing Nathan to smile and turn to him. Tommy Merlin. Nathan greeted, hugging the man in a brotherly fashion. I missed you, buddy. Tommy said, laughing. Later, Nathan, Tommy, and Thea sat across from Walter and Moira as Tommy caught Nathan up. Okay, what else did you miss? Super Bowl winners. Giants, Steelers, Saints, Packers, Giants again. A black president, that's new. Tommy said as Nathan nodded, watching as Walter poured his mother a glass of wine. Oh, and lost. They were all dead, I think. What was it like there? Thea asked, causing everyone else to stop and look at him. Cold, lonely, and downright miserable. Nathan said grimly, causing Thea to look at him sadly along with his mother. Tomorrow, you and me, hit the city. You've got a lot to catch up on. Tommy said, causing Nathan to nod. Great idea, Moira said. Good, I was hoping to swing by the office. Nathan said, catching how Walter froze before he spoke. There's plenty of time for all that. Queen Consolidated isn't going anywhere. Walter said, causing Nathan to look over at him. But it is the Queen family's company, is it not? So, as the last living male queen, I have the right to walk in and see the company I'll eventually be taking charge of when I decide to. Nathan said, staring Walter dead in the eye. Okay, so what else you miss? Tommy asked him, hoping to change the subject as tension suddenly filled the room. Apparently my mother's wedding, Nathan said, causing Moira and Walter to look at Thea. I swear, I didn't say anything. Thea said. You didn't have to, Thea. Nathan said, pointing to Walter's hand. The both of you are wearing wedding rings. Walter has been here before I even walked in the house, and moments ago was blatantly pouring my mother a glass of wine. Walter cleared his throat as he shifted uncomfortably, while Thea smiled and was a little amazed along with Tommy how Nathan was able to piece everything together. Nate, Walter and I don't want you to think that either one of us did anything to disrespect your father. Moira said gently. I don't care about that, Mom. Nathan said, looking at her, as she frowned. Does he make you happy? Moira glanced to Walter and looked back to Nathan, nodding her head. Yes he does. Then, I have nothing more to say on the matter. Nathan said, standing up. I need some air. He said, kissing Thea's forehead and tapping Tommy's shoulder. Nathan walked off. Midnight. Walter and Moira walked into Nathan's room to see him asleep in his bed, as he flinched in his sleep while it thundered outside. Dad, Sarah. No. Nathan was flinching more heavily, screaming for Sarah and Robert when Moira touched him. Nate. Wake up. On instinct, Nathan grabbed Moira and tossed her onto the bed and was over her with his fist raised. Nathaniel. Walter screamed as Nathan looked down at Moira in horror before he quickly got away from her and huddled into a corner. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Nathan said, hugging his knees to his chest. Moira looked at her son sadly and approached him, and when she touched him he flinched before she pulled him into a hug. No, it's okay, Nathan. It's all right, sweetheart. You're home, Moira said as she clutched onto him tightly, wondering what he's been through. Morning. After giving Thea a rock called a hosen, Nathan and Tommy went out, before he convinced Tommy to take him to see Laurel, his one-night stand, Oliver's ex-girlfriend and Sarah's sister. Currently he was walking down the street with her. So you went to law school? 5 years, and that's what you want to talk about? Laurel asked. No, Nathan said, looking at her sadly. I'm sorry about Sarah. Are you? Sarah was my best friend. I had no idea that she was on the gambit until an hour into the trip. And I'm supposed to believe that? After what happened between us, Oliver decided to screw my little sister. I never told Oliver that we slept together. Trust me, I wanted to rub it in his face, but I didn't. I gave you my word. That used to mean something. Laurel said as Nathan looked at her seriously. We buried an empty coffin, because her body was in the bottom of the ocean where you left her. It should have been you. She spat but immediately regretted it when a dead expression came over Nathan's face, and she flinched seeing his eyes. Have a good day, Dinah. Nathan said coldly, walking away. Laurel stood there as she watched Nathan leave, regretting what she said, as Nathan had been the responsible good brother, who was a bit of a playboy, but was very respectful when he needed to be, when his temper was in check, and he always looked out for Sarah. With a sigh she walked back to work. With Nathan. Nathan and Tommy walked to Tommy's car. We took care of that. Good call. Now we can make up for lost time. Tommy said as Nathan took deep breath. If you're not sick of fish, let's find some leggy models and eat sushi off them. What do you say? Nathan made to speak, but a van pulled up behind them, and masked men got out. What the hell? Nathan asked just as he and Tommy were shot with tranquilizers. Nathan fell to his knees, looking up before his eyes widened when an elderly man walked out and saw what was going on. Hey! He yelled, only for one of the three men to open fire with his assault rifle, causing the man to die before he hit the ground. Nathan glared up at the man just as a hood was put over his face. Flashback. 2007. Nathan sat beside his dad, with his head in his lap, as tears streamed down his face, the reality of Oliver's death kicking in. He couldn't think of Sarah being dead. There was always the chance she was just adrift somewhere in a piece of debris, and hopefully she'd find a way home and be safe. Here, son, Robert said, handing Nathan a water bottle. Drink. Nathan opened the water and took a sip. What the hell are you doing? That's all we've got, the surviving crewman shouted. If anybody's making it out of here, it's gonna be him. Robert said, glaring at the man before he looked to Nathan. I'm so sorry, I thought I'd have more time. I'm not the man you think I am. I didn't build our city. I failed it, and I wasn't the only one. Nathan rose an eyebrow in confusion. End flashback. Mr. Queen? A muffled male voice said, causing Nathan's eyes to snap open just as the hood was yanked off his face. Mr. Queen? Nathan looked around as a man held a taser in his face, and saw Tommy on the ground unconscious but alive. Did your father survive that accident? I ask the questions. You give me the answers. The man with the taser said before he tasered Nathan, who groaned. Did he make it to the island? Did he tell you anything? The man quickly tasered Nathan again, only to stop when Nathan began to laugh and step back, looking to his partners. Yes, he did. What did he tell you, Mr. Queen? The man asked before he saw Nathan smirk in pain, followed by darkness was all he knew. Nathan yanked his kunai from the man's forehead, and used his body as a shield when his partner opened fire, before he spun around the man and slit the second man's throat, while the last man, the old man, ran, while Nathan ran over to Tommy and checked for a pulse. Finding one, he stood up. He threw his kunai so hard that the blade pierced through the back of the guy's head and came out the front, impaling itself in the wall, leaving a noticeable spider web crack. Nathan retrieved his kunai and within a minute was back, zip tied to the chair just as Tommy awoke, none the wiser that his friend had just slaughtered 3 people, armed with assault rifles, with only a kunai. Later, Queen Manor. Nathan, Tommy, Moira, and Walter sat in the comfort room with DT. Lance, father of Laurel, and Sarah. The man was shooting dirty looks at Nathan, who told him of a man wearing a mask and a hood had saved him and Tommy. So that's your story? Lance asked in disbelief. A guy in a black hood, and a mask covering the bottom of his face, flew in and single-handedly took out 3 armed kidnappers? I mean, who is he? Why would he do that? Hell if I know. Find him, and you can ask. Nathan said, annoyed at the dirty looks he was being given from the man. What about you? You see the hood guy? Lance asked Tommy, who just shook his head. I saw nothing. When I woke up the guys were dead. Nathan was zip-tied to the chair, and that's it. Yeah, Lance nodded before he glared at Nathan. It's funny, isn't it? One day back and somebody's gunning for you. Aren't you popular? It's both a gift and a curse. Nathan shrugged nonchalantly. Lance made to shout at Nathan, but Moira spoke. Were you able to identify the men? Scrubbed identities. Untraceable weapons. These were pros. Lance's partner said. Yeah, they figured you'd pay a king's ransom to get your boy back. Or a queen's ransom, as it were. After all, a parent would do anything to keep their child safe. Lance said snarkingly as he glared at Nathan. You sure you're okay, detective? Nathan asked, looking the man in the eye. Perhaps you shouldn't be the one leading this case, since it seems to me, you couldn't give two shits if I died. You listen here, you son. Quentin, Lance's partner hissed, stopping his partner. Mr. Lance, you seem to share the habit of projecting your anger at my brother onto me, when I've done nothing wrong to your family. Oliver took Sarah onto the yacht, not me. Is your anger justified? Certainly, but the man you're angry at is dead. So get the hell out of my house and go do your job. Nathan said harshly while Quentin stood up and left along with his partner. As Nathan stood up and watched after him, Moira, catching the tear that slipped from his eye, frowned sadly as he walked away. Next day, Nathan, wearing a black V-neck, black jeans, and a leather jacket, walked out the house, ready to leave when he stopped when Moira called his name, Nathan. Turning around, he saw her and Walter walking toward him from a buff, African-American man standing with a stiff posture. I'd like you meet someone. This is John Diggle, he'll be accompanying you from now on. I really don't need a babysitter, Mom. Nathan said. Darling, Nathaniel is a grown man. If he doesn't feel he needs armed protection, Walter butted in. You know, I understand, but this is something I need. Moira interrupted, looking at Nathan, who glanced to Diggle before he sighed, looking to his mother. Fine, Nathan said, causing Moira to smile before she kissed his cheek and walked away. Moments later, Nathan sat in the back of the Rolls-Royce while Diggle drove. So what do I call you? Nathan asked, making conversation. Diggle's good. Dig, if you want. John said. You're ex-military? Nathan asked, looking out the window before he smirked. Yes, sir. 105th Airborne out of Kandahar, retired. Been in the private sector a little more than 4 years now. I don't want there to be any confusion. My ability to keep you from harm will outweigh your comfort. Do we have an agreement, sir? Sir? John, not hearing a response, looked back only to see Nathan was gone and immediately slammed on the brakes and got out looking for his charge. Abandoned Queen Industrial Warehouse. With Nathan. Nathan walked into the warehouse and paused, seeing a note on the door. Have your weapons and your suit ready. Good luck, beloved. T. Nathan smiled at the note that was left by Talia. Walking inside, he saw a salmon ladder, lots of other workout equipment, and a wall with different types of swords, a bow and lots of arrows, and numerous kunais, shuriken, and other types of knives. Seeing a box on a desk, Nathan walked over and opened it to see his suit and mask. His suit, which is the same design as Oliver's first costume, was jet black with red accents around the hood and on the arms. His costume had a black and red utility belt where he stored all his kunai and shuriken. Shuriken looks like this. Product, black titanium ninja star ASPX. He had a tactical katana, can be found here along with kunai looks. Product, full tang ninja sword with kunai knives strapped across his back. He wore black leather gloves with a black metal plate on the back of the hand. He wore black steel gauntlets with 3 blades on the side. His gauntlets and gloves are the same ones that Ra's al Ghul wears in the training scene in Batman Begins. He also had a face mask that covered his mouth, jaw and nose, Kakashi's face mask. 2. Nathan himself meditated for a few hours, before he walked to the desk, and pulled out his father's book, where names were written on every page, before his attention went to the news coverage that had Laurel's face on it along with some bald, fat, middle-aged guy. The suit alleges Hunt committed acts of fraud and theft against the underprivileged. Laurel Lance, attorney for the city, putting the TV on mute, Nathan looked to his father's book, and found the name Adam Hunt. After researching his target, Nathan began to get ready. Adam Hunt's crimes go deeper than simple fraud and theft, but anyone who has gotten too close to the truth, he's been able to bully, bribe, or kill. Well, he has yet to deal with me, Nathan said, placing his mask on as his eyes changed to a blood-red color with slit pupils. Later, parking lot. Adam Hunt and 3 men walked toward his limousine. Remind Grell, I put him on the bench. I can take him off. I will turn him into a cautionary tale. Adam said. Yes, Mr. Hunt. His lapdog said. And this attorney, Laurel Lance? You said she wasn't gonna be a problem anymore. I told you to fix that situation. Adam said before he glared at the man who looked at him. why are you still here? The man quickly ran off, while Adam and his 2 guards walked away, but the lights burst into sparks when shuriken were thrown at them, causing Adam and his men to look up in bewilderment, before a kunai struck a man in his heart, causing him to grunt and fall. Get in the car. Adam's other guard ordered, opening the door allowing Adam to get inside, and as soon as the door was closed the man opened fire at where he thought the attacker was. You missed. A dark voice behind him, before he was pierced between the eyes by a black and red arrow, causing Adam to shout in surprise before he was grabbed and thrown to the ground to see a black figure with on top of the car. Whoa, 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 Adam shouted as the figure was now standing over him. Look, just tell me what you want. Adam grunted when the man grabbed him by his throat and held him up so that he was looking into the blood-red irises and slit pupils of Nathan. You're gonna transfer $40 million into Starling City Bank account 1141 by 10 p.m. tomorrow night. FYI, Naruto's voice modulator makes him sound exactly like Prometheus from Arrow's Season 5, 3. Or what? Adam asked. Or I'm gonna take it by force. And you won't like how. This is your only warning. There will not be another. The man said, walking away as Adam breathed a sigh of relief, but needing to get the last word he shouted. If I see you again, you're dead. Adam yelled, only for the man to continue walking and flick his arm back, before Adam gasped in pain, when a shuriken sliced his right cheek right under his eyes wide open. Looking back, clutching his face, he saw the throwing star embedded deep into his limousine's trunk. Later, Adam's office. Lance and his partner were in front of Adam, who had a bandage on his cheek. He was wearing a black hood, and he had these red eyes. He had a sword. Adam said and saw the detectives look at each other. What, you don't believe me? He asked, picking up the shuriken and handing it to Lance's partner. That maniac put 2 of my men in the morgue. Well, thanks for your statement. We'll put out an APB on a ninja. Quentin said sarcastically. Hey, pal, I'm not some grocer who got taken for his register. I go to the front of the line. Adam said, glaring at Quentin. He said he'd be back here by 10 p.m. Make sure you're here first. You can coordinate with my new head of security. Quentin and his partner looked over to the man, who nodded. All right. Well, thanks for your time. Quentin said as he and his partner left. Looks like Queen was telling the truth. Quentin's partner said, looking at the shuriken. Yeah, well, there's a first time for everything. Quentin said, still sore on how Nathan had talked to him. This hooded guy comes looking for trouble, he'll find it. Later, Queen Manor. Nathan walked out of the house, in a white button-up, black jeans, and white-black Maison Margiela 22 future high-tops. Walking to the Rolls-Royce, he opened the door to see Diggle in the backseat. Put on your seatbelt, sir. Wouldn't want you to miss your party. Nathan smiled as he got in, chuckling. Club. Nathan walked into the party, checking his phone to see he had in about 50 minutes to party. Putting his phone up, he looked up just as a spotlight was put on him, as Tommy ran over, cueing the DJ to cut the music as everyone turned to him. And Tommy, everybody, hey. Man of the hour. And, ladies, please give this man a proper homecoming. Nathan smiled as 4 very beautiful women lead him to a table as We Are the Champions played. Getting onto the table, Nathan smiled. Thank you very much, everybody. Nate. Tommy called, handing Nathan a shot of tequila. Knocking the shot back, Nathan smiled. God, have I missed alcohol. Nathan yelled, causing everyone to shout and raise their glasses. DJ, play the music. I've been gone for 5 long years and I have a lot to catch up on. The music played as Nathan got off the table and began to mingle. Across the street, Adam was still in his office and took drinking a glass of scotch, his hand shaking as he noticed he had 30 minutes left, while his men loaded their assault rifles. Walking over to the window, Hunt looked down to the club and frowned. What the hell's going on out there? Across the street, party for the guy they rescued off that island. Nathan Queen. Dracon said. Club. Nathan was talking to some old friends who showed up to support him when Tommy walked over and pointed to Dig, who was watching him like a hawk. Hey, does he wipe for you too? He asked, causing Nathan to shake his head before Tommy took him by the shoulder and turned him to the girls dancing on the table. Now, by my rough estimate, you have not had in 1839 days. As your wingman, I highly recommend Carmen Golden. Which one? Nathan asked. She looks like the chick from Twilight. Tommy said. What's Twilight? Nathan asked Tommy. You're so better off not knowing. Tommy said, causing Nathan to smile. I'll take your word for it. Nathan said before he frowned when he saw Thea talking to someone who reached into his pocket. Back in a sec, Nathan said Tommy, walking over to his sister who was about to take drugs from some punk, before his hand shot out and grabbed the man's fingers and broke all the bones in his hand. "Ah!" the man shouted as Nathan took the drugs from his hand. "Nathan," Thea called shock as she and her friends watched along with Diggle and Tommy. "You have one of three choices. Option 1. I call the cops, and tell them you were about to give drugs to minors who shouldn't even be here. Option 2. We walk outside, and I beat your ass to unrecognizable pulp for attempting to give my baby sister drugs. Option 3. You get the fuck out of here right now. Please, choose option 2. Nathan said, glaring at the man. "Okay, man, chill out, I'll leave," the man said before Nathan released him. "I better not see you in here again," Nathan said as the drug dealer quickly left while Nathan looked to Thea. "Who let you in here?" Nathan asked, frowning. "I'm not 12 anymore," Thea said. "No, you're 17, Nathan retorted. "Nate, I love you, but you can't come back here and judge me. Especially for being just like you and Ollie," Thea said. "And look where that got us," Nathan said before he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I get that it wasn't easy when I was dead, and you probably found this as a way to cope, but I don't like it, and I will be there to ruin your buzz every time I catch you, do you understand me?" Thea looked at Nathan and wanted to argue but couldn't as he motioned for Diggle. "See to it that my sister and her friends get home safely," Nathan said, causing Diggle to look like he wanted to protest. "I'm at a party with nothing but beautiful women around. Get my sister home safely, Dig, and come back. I won't disappear. Scout's honor." Diggle looked at Nathan for a moment and nodded before he led the girls out of the club. Shaking his head, Nathan walked to the trash and tossed the drugs away before he made to head back to the party but bumped into Laurel. "You're here." "Why are you here?" Nathan asked. "Tommy. He made the point that we have too many years between us to leave things the way we left them," Laurel said, causing Nathan to nod slowly, taking note of Tommy watching jealously from the bar. "Is there some place quieter that we could go?" "Yeah," Nathan nodded before they walked off. Moments later, Nathan was leaning on the rail of the top floor overlooking the party as Laurel stood beside him. "I'm sorry about saying that you should have been the one who died. That was wrong. I was projecting my anger at Oliver onto you, and that was wrong. I had hoped that when she was swept overboard that maybe she was adrift on a piece of debris and found by someone and returned safely to you and your family," Nathan said, causing Laurel to look at him. "I hated Oliver for years. He ruined your relationship with Sarah and got her killed. You were right when you said it should have been me, because I failed her. I sometimes think if I had never approached you both that day all those years ago at the mall, this pain wouldn't have been visited upon you and your parents." Laurel looked at Nathan sadly, watching as he laughed mirthlessly, blinking the tears away from his eyes. "If you need someone to talk to about what happened to you, I'm here." Nathan looked at her before his phone vibrated and he checked it to see it was 10 p.m. and no money had been deposited into the account, causing him to frown. "Something wrong?" Laurel asked. "Just some reports requesting interviews," Nathan said, putting his phone in his pocket before he looked at her seriously. "I would like that, Laurel. I really do, but it's better if you stay away from me. My family has put you through enough, and the last thing I want is to hurt you again." Laurel made to speak but Nathan kissed her before she could, and the two began to make out passionately before he pulled away, leaning his forehead against hers as they breathed heavily. "That'll hold me together for another 5 years," Nathan said, kissing her forehead before he walked off, leaving Laurel to watch after him sadly. Nathan slipped out after that. Adam Hunt's building. Drakon was putting the men into position. "You two cover the elevator. Hang back and be ready. Stay in the corners and stay alert," Drakon said, walking to Hunt's office and closing the doors before he activated the security system. "It's past 10. He's never getting in here." Adam nodded and turned to look out the window, missing the black canai that struck the outside wall with an audible crack. Quentin and his partner were in front of the building with a few other cops waiting. "All's clear." Quentin nodded. "Yeah," his partner said. With Adam. Adam was calming down, figuring the man was all talk, but the lights suddenly cut out, caused his nerves to act up once again. As the elevator dinged, the door opened and a black and red arrow hit one of the 5 guards in the heart, causing his gun to fire into the ceiling. Nathan stepped out and punched one of the guard's kneecaps out, before pivoting around, taking out his tactical katana and slicing his throat open before slicing the neck of the one who had his kneecap broken. Not losing momentum, he threw one of his shuriken into the neck one of the last two remaining guards in the hall, before moving behind a pillar, to avoid getting shot. He threw a kunai from behind the cover of the pillar, which hit the guy in the hands, causing him to drop his gun, before Nathan rushed out and kicked him through the glass doors of Adam's office, causing the man to be lit up with gunfire. Entering, Nathan shot one of his black and red arrows into a man's chest, before he ducked under a swing and elbowed his attacker's knee, causing it to cave in, before Nathan snapped the guy's neck, and shot an arrow at Adam, who ducked while Nathan had his bow trained on him. "You missed," Adam said. "You would think so," Nathan said before he was tackled by Drakon, and the two began to fight while Adam eased out of the room and made a call to Quentin. "He's here," Adam said frantically. "Downstairs. All units converge. All units converge," Quentin yelled as he and his fellow law enforcement officers ran to the building. Nathan ducked under Drakon's wild swing, and began to bob and weave through the man's wild attacks, before he grabbed the man's arm when he attempted a right cross, and yanked him forward and an unforgiving elbow to his nose, causing the man to fall to the ground, and Nathan threw a shuriken into Drakon's neck when he tried to reach for his gun. 4. Taking deep breaths, Nathan calmed himself, before he looked to where he heard multiple rushing footsteps. "Lay down your weapons or we will open fire. I repeat, lay down your weapons," Quentin yelled, only for Nathan to get up and run, causing the cops to immediately begin shooting, but they were shocked when he jumped through the window. Rushing over, Quentin and his partner saw the black figure glide across the street and land on the rooftop of the building when the Queen's party just so happened to be. "Tell me you saw that," Quentin's partner said. "Okay, let's go. Move," Quentin ordered as he and cops ran. Club. Nathan had returned without anyone noticing, and currently had two girls leaning into his side whose names were Alexis, Nina Dobrev, and Pamela Shea Mitchell. Having a good time, everyone groaned when a SWAT member ordered the DJ to cut the music. "Search the building, roof to basement. Find him," Quentin yelled as he approached the crowd while Nathan stood up. "Starling City Police. The party's over, kids." "Oh, Mr. Merlin, imagine my shock to find you here. Roofie, anyone special tonight?" Quentin asked, glaring at Tommy, who smiled. "Detective," Nathan said, walking forward, causing Quentin to look at him. "This is a private party. There was an incident at Adam Hunt's building." "Know about that?" Quentin asked suspiciously. "Who's Adam Hunt?" Nathan asked. "A millionaire bottom feeder. I'm surprised you aren't friends." "Well, I am a friendly guy, but I have no new friends, seeing as I've been out of town for a while." Nathan shrugged as Tommy chuckled. "Yeah, well, he just got attacked by the guy with the hood. The guy that saved your ass the other day," Quentin said, still glaring at Nathan. "Really, did you catch him?" Nathan asked, only for Quentin to glare. "Shame, I would really like to speak with him." "Did you even try to save her?" Quentin asked, stepping into Nathan's face. "Okay, let's go, partner," Quentin's partner said, starting to pull him away. "Did you even try to save my daughter?" Quentin asked. "You'll never know," Nathan said, causing Quentin to try to rush him, but his partner and other officer pulled him away. "Sarah wouldn't want this. Let's go," his partner said. "Now that is over with. Let's party," Nathan yelled, getting cheers from everyone just as the music started, but Tommy grabbed his shoulder. "Some coincidence. You asking to have your party here and Hunt getting robbed next door. And by the same guy who rescued us at the warehouse," Tommy said. "I know, right?" Nathan said, smiling as Alexis and Sally appeared by him, and he wrapped an arm around their shoulders. "Don't worry about it, Tommy. If I were you, Tommy, I'd just be glad you're still alive." "What happened to you on that island?" Tommy asked with a frown. Nathan winked at Tommy and left with the two girls. Next morning, Adam Hunt was enraged as he yelled into his phone. "What the hell are you talking about? $40 million doesn't just up and vanish. Untraceable? It is $40 million. Find it." Slamming his phone onto his desk, he sat down, putting his face into his hands. "How did he do it?" he asked, unwary of the arrow Nathan had tossed at him was sticking to his wall, and a small light was blinking on it. Queen Manor. Nathan sat at the foot of his bed, looking at his tablet, as he remotely drained Adam Hunt's bank account, and split it up between all the people he had extorted from. Crossing with a smirk, he closed the window, and placed his tablet down after shutting it off, and looked to the picture of him and his dad on his desk. Flashback. 2007. Nathan was on the raft with his dad and the crew worker, trying to sleep, while his dad watched the crew worker who was leaning on the raft with a hunting knife in hand. "There's not enough for all of us." Robert whispered to Nathan, "Save your strength, Dad. I can't lose anyone else." Nathan whispered back, "You can survive this. Make it home, make it better. Right my wrongs. But you got alive through this first. You hear me, Nathan? You hear me, son?" Nathan was looking at his dad, and nodded slowly. "Just rest, Dad. You can't give up," he said, closing his eyes to sleep before he heard a gunshot causing him to spring up and see his dad had shot the crew member, sending him into the ocean. "Dad?" Nathan asked in shock. "Survive," Robert said, putting the gun to his head, causing Nathan's eyes to widen as he rushed forward, reaching for Robert. "No," Nathan yelled as the gun went off and his dad killed himself. Clutching his body to himself, Nathan sobbed, as his father died in front of him. 5. End flashback. Nathan was snapped out of his flashback when the girls began to kiss his back, and Pamela brought him into a kiss, while Alexis got onto her knees between his legs, taking him into her mouth. Later, a man dressed in all black walked over to Moira and spoke. "The police failed to identify the men I hired to kidnap Nathaniel. And they never will. Should we arrange another abduction?" "No. There are other ways of finding out what my son knows," Moira said, getting a nod from her accomplice as she looked up to the window of Nathan's bedroom, he and his two guests having been locked in said room all day. Despite herself, she couldn't help but smile, as it was just like old times. Even though her heart was still broken as her eldest boy was deceased, she still loved Nathan with all her heart. 1 week later. It's been a week since Nathan had returned. Besides sleeping with every beautiful woman he's come across, he also crossed off some of the other names on the list. Last night, he had found one, and forced the man to return the money he had stolen from innocent people. Walking toward the foyer while tightening his tie, he gave a loud yawn. He stretched his arms out. "Still tired?" Moira asked. "Well, he has been sleeping with pretty much everybody since he's been back," Thea said, a bit salty, as Nathan had been killing her buzz every chance he got, just like he said he would. 5 years of no, Nathan stated, as if that explained everything. Picking up a Granny Smith apple from the fruit bowl, taking a bite out of his apple, his attention went to a news report. Over the past 15 years, Mr. Redmond has withdrawn more than $30 million from the plan's account. Mr. Redmond claims refunding the Halcyon pension plan has always been his intent. But some sources say Redmond was coerced by the vigilante. Nathan looked at the drawing of his mask, and looked to his family. "Someone's getting famous," he said, smirking. "It's nice to see our culture has improved while I was away. The city used to be different. People used to feel safe," Moira said, standing up as Walter helped her put her jacket on. "Oh, what's the matter, Mom? Afraid we're gonna be next?" Thea asked, smirking. "Do you have any questions, Nathaniel? It's a simple proof of life declaration. Read out a brief statement to the judge and your death in absentia judgment will be voided," Walter said. "It's fine. I've been in a courtroom before. Now can we get this over with, so I can get out of this bloody suit, please?" Nathan said, causing Thea and Moira to smile, knowing of Nathan's dislike for wearing suits and tuxedos, while Walter frowned a bit, since all he wore were suits. Later, courtroom. Nathan stood in front of the bench as everyone from the Lance family, to his own and others, watched him as he told the story of what happened. "I heard Sarah scream, and ran to my brother's room, to find her crying in a corner, while a large pipe had ran Oliver through the heart. I tried to get Sarah to come with me to safety, but then the ship capsized and she fell out the window. I swam to the surface, and my dad pulled me into a life raft. For a few hours we were adrift, and in that time my dad kept apologizing. For what I don't know, but when he saw that there were only enough food and water for one person, he put a gun to his head, told me he loved me, and he pulled the trigger," Nathan said, struggling emotionally with a few parts, causing people to gasp and mutter amongst themselves. Laurel, Tommy, Thea, and Moira looked at Nathan in shock and horror, while Quentin got up and walked off, only caring about what happened to Sarah. He will never forgive the Queen family for what they did to his family. "I almost died. I thought that I had because I spent so many days on that life raft before I saw the island. When I reached it, I knew that I was gonna have to live for all of us. And in those 5 years, it was the thought of my family and friends that kept me going. Your Honor, we move to vitiate the death in absentia filed after Nathaniel's disappearance at sea aboard the Queen's Gambit 5 years ago." A lawyer said as Nathan looked back to Thea, who was wiping her eyes of tears. Unfortunately, we will not be requesting that the declaration of death filed for the petitioner's father and brother, Robert Queen and Oliver Queen, be rescinded. The Queen family is only entitled to one miracle, I'm afraid. Nathan frowned and took a deep breath. 30 minutes later, after telling his mom that he wasn't up to going to the office, Nathan and Tommy walked out of the courtroom. Last week you couldn't wait to get to the company. Tommy, you really need to stop microanalyzing me, Nathan said with an annoyed sigh before he looked to the large crowd of reporters. Who is that? Tommy raised an eyebrow looking over. Martin Summers. Laurel's prosecuting him, he said. Nathan nodded and glanced over his shoulder at Diggle, who was behind him. Tapping Tommy's shoulder, Nathan walked forward, with Diggle on him. Oh, there's Mr. Queen, a reporter said before they rushed him, but he raised a hand. This is my friend Mr. Diggle, he'll answer all your questions, Nathan said, causing Diggle to look at him in shock just as the reporters turned their attention onto him. Mr. Queen, Diggle yelled as recorders were put in his face as he watched Nathan push through the crowd and go to the driver door of the Rolls-Royce, and smirked at him before getting into the vehicle and speeding off. Nathan's base. Nathan had stopped a few blocks away from the courthouse and immediately went to his base. Currently he was reading the journal and narrowed his eyes at the name above Adam Hunt's. Martin Summers. Businessman and CEO of Starling Port. Also secret benefactor to the Starling City Triad. The Starling City Triad pays him handsomely and he lets them smuggle in drugs and other illegal things through his port. Laurel's target is one of the worst of Starling City, so it's no surprise his name is on my father's list. The city's police and DA can't stop him, or won't. Laurel thinks she's the only one willing to bring him to justice. She's wrong. Docs. Martin Summers was seriously pissed off. That bitch lawyer thinks she's safe just because her dad was some punk-ass cop. Well, she was in for a rude awakening. Turning to his men he spoke, you, listen up. The longer this goes on, the more the media is gonna crucify me. You shut this trial down, understand me? Yes, sir. A man said right before a shuriken took out the light, and when it flickered again, Martin Summers' men were unconscious, with a kunai stabbed into the desk, and the man himself was gone. Elsewhere on docks, Martin groaned as he awoke to find himself hanging upside down, while a figure was holding a bow. Martin Summers. A dark voice greeted. Who the hell are you? Martin asked, only to gasp when the man began to walk forward, revealing his blood-red eyes and slit pupils. You have failed this city, Nathan said, walking forward as Martin began to struggle. No, no, no. Martin screamed as Nathan came to a stop right in front of him as Martin felt a tremor of fear run down his spine. This is your only warning. You're going to testify in that trial to having Victor Nicenti killed. You won't get a second chance. Nathan growled before he fired an arrow, causing Martin to scream before he grabbed his cheek as blood leaked from the fresh wound, and looked to see he was alone. Queen Manor. 1 hour later, Nathan had gone to the mall where he met the beautiful Nozomi Sasaki, a Japanese glamour model who was in town on holiday. Going with the flow, Nathan and Nozomi walked into the manor to hear his mother arguing with Diggle. I hired you to protect my son. I'm not a bodyguard, but it seems to me the first requirement would be staying next to the man you're hired to protect, Moira said. With all due respect, ma'am, I've never had a client who didn't want my protection. Diggle said. I hired you. That makes me the client, Moira replied as she paced in front of Diggle. Now, where do you think my son is going on these chaperone-less excursions? Ma'am, I truly do not know, Diggle said as Nathan appeared leaning in the threshold. And he truly doesn't, Nathan said, getting their attention. Then perhaps you'd like to share with me, where it is you run off to? Moira said. Well, Mom, I've been alone for 5 years, so I've been getting to know people and catching up with the times, Nathan said just as Nozomi walked in looking amazed. Mom, Diggle, this is Nozomi Sasaki. Pleasure to meet you, Nozomi said, shaking Moira's hand as Moira smiled. Likewise, welcome to my home, Moira said politely. It's very lovely, Nozomi replied. Can I have a moment with my son, please? Moira said. Sure, Nozomi said, before she pecked Nathan's cheek. Reisa, would you please show my new friend to my room, please? Nathan asked his friend, maid, who smiled and nodded. Follow me, please, Reisa said before she led the model away, as Moira frowned at Nathan. What? Nathan asked, smiling. You think this is funny? Moira asked, upset. Mom, Nathan began. It's not safe. I don't need protection, Mom. I'm not a baby, I can take care of myself. Nathan said. You've already been abducted once. Your old club fights have nothing to do with this. There is a maniac out there hunting the wealthy. This isn't a game. I lost you once, and I am not going through that again. Okay. Nathan nodded. I promise, Dig, will always have Nathaniel Queen in his field of vision. He said. Thank you. Moira said, about to walk off, but Nathan grabbed her wrist, causing her to look at him. I apologize for worrying you. It'll take some time for me to get used to being back here. I'll try better to get reacquainted with society. Nathan said, causing Moira to nod before she hugged him tightly. I'm just so worried about you. Moira said, causing Nathan to nod before she left, and Nathan looked to Diggle. Have a good night, Mr. Diggle. I'd stick around, but I got a hot woman waiting upstairs. Nathan said, walking off, causing Diggle to scoff and leave. Next morning, Docs. Martin sat in his office while police and CSI members were looking around. Well, I owe you an apology, Mr. Summers. We come all the way down to your docks and turns out you don't need the police. Quentin said, which is exactly what I've been saying. Martin said, coldly, sitting in his desk. So I guess that 911 call we got last night from your stevedores saying you were attacked by a guy in a hood, a bow and arrow, and some ninja weapons. Quentin said as he looked to a mark in the desk. I guess that was a practical joke? These guys like to fool around. Martin shrugged. Yeah, you know, I'd be very inclined to believe an honest, upstanding businessman like yourself, except well, one of my men found this at your docks. Quentin said, grabbing an arrow from an evidence bag. You see, there's this vigilante running around. He thinks he's Robin Hood or something. Robbing the rich. Trying to teach them a lesson, I guess, I don't know. But the point is, the man is a killer. And nothing and no one is gonna stop me from bringing him clown. Quentin grabbed a kunai from the evidence bag and placed the kunai back into the hole in the desk, seeing that it was a perfect fit, and looked up at Martin, who frowned. But like you said, clearly nothing happened here last night. Isn't this a conflict of interest, detective? After all, your daughter is suing me. I'm good at keeping my emotions in check. Quentin lied, seeing as he was blaming the innocent brother of a dead man who was the cause of his daughter's death. I'm not. Martin scowled, standing up and glaring at Quentin. You and your daughter don't want to find out what I'm capable of when I get emotional. Quentin frowned and with a nod turned away, leaving, a bit unsettled. Nathaniel's car. Yeah, you know, I'd be very inclined to believe an honest, upstanding businessman like yourself, except well, one of my men found this at your docks. Quentin said, grabbing an arrow from an evidence bag. You see, there's this vigilante running around. He thinks he's Robin Hood or something. Robbing the rich. Trying to teach them a lesson, I guess, I don't know. But the point is, the man is a killer. And nothing and no one is gonna stop me from bringing him down. Quentin placed a kunai from the evidence bag back into the hole in the desk, seeing that it was a perfect fit, and looked up at Martin, who frowned. But like you said, clearly, nothing happened here last night. Isn't this a conflict of interest, detective? After all, your daughter is suing me. I'm good at keeping my emotions in check. Quentin lied, seeing as he was blaming the innocent brother of a dead man who was the cause of his daughter's death. You and your daughter don't want to find out what I'm capable of when I get emotional. Nathan heard from his live feed on his phone as he was on his way to Queen Consolidated. Growling, he cut the feed. If you try anything, Martin, I'll make you wish you were dead. He said to himself. Queen Consolidated. Nathan walked into his family's company with a whistle of awe, as Moira walked beside him arm in arm, ignoring Walter. Nathan looked to the very attractive female employees, who were giving him looks of appreciation and lust. However, his gaze locked with a blonde, glasses-wearing IT girl, and he winked at her, before smiling as he watched her blush and walk off. Ha, are you enjoying yourself? Moira asked. Yes, I am, Nathan said as Walter led them into the office. I remember your father brought you here when you were a boy. Yeah, used to bore me to sleep. Nathan chuckled as he felt Moira tighten her hold on his arm, causing his smile to widen slightly. You always were so excited to leave. Walter reminisced. Yeah, so what have I missed? Nathan asked. Well, Queen Consolidated's success of late is a result of its targeted diversification. We have been making impressive inroads in cutting-edge fields like biotech and clean energy. That's neat. Nathan nodded. Nathan, Walter and I have something to discuss with you. Moira said, sitting on the couch and patting the seat next to her. Come, please, sit. Nathan nodded and sat beside Moira, looking at her with a raised eyebrow, before looking to Walter, who spoke. The company is about to break ground on a site for the Applied Sciences Division. And we would like to honor your father by dedicating the building in his name. Sounds good. Nathan nodded. And we'd like to make an announcement at the dedication. That you will be taking a leadership position in the company. Moira said. No. Nathan said, shaking his head. No. You're your company, Moira started. I know, Mom, but I only just returned a week ago from 5 years of isolation. I'm not mentally ready to lead anything. Nathan said, looking at her seriously before he gave a smile. I will lead the company, just not yet. Moira nodded with a frown, which was when Nathan said, but how about we start the Robert Queen Foundation? The Robert Queen Foundation? Walter asked. Yeah, a foundation that would fund scientific research and help research by providing facilities and training. Also, medicine and medical help. It'll give annual awards for medical breakthroughs and lifelong commitment, similar to the Nobel Foundation. Also, it'll be responsible for the funds and running dozens of other free clinics all over the city and in other trouble cities like the Glades. Also, the Oliver Queen Foundation could be a patron foundation and supporter of arts, families, education and tolerance. The foundation would support and help to run a number of orphanages and free schools, and provides teachers for those who have learning difficulties. Artists could apply for grants from the foundation to help support them in furthering their arts. The foundation could sponsor companies like Family Finders Inc. Family Finders? Walter asked, confused. Family Finders is an organization directed at finding lost people and uniting families. Nathan answered before looking to Moira, who looked thoughtful. The foundation could also sponsor and run dozens of soup kitchens within the city. Nathan said. Nathaniel, I don't tea. I love it. Moira said, interrupting Walter, who frowned as Nathan smiled brightly. Later. Queen Manor. Nathan was in the kitchen, cutting up some vegetables when he looked up as Thea dressed up walked through. Hey, where you going? He asked. Somewhere loud and smoky. Thea said smugly, as Nathan sighed. What are you doing? Well, today's the second Tuesday of the month. Nathan said, causing Thea to blink in shock. I thought we could hang out, and you could help me catch up on movies? Thea looked at Nathan for a minute. Every second Tuesday he'd make tacos, and against their parents' wishes let her stay up with him to do anything she wanted. Sure. Thea smiled, causing Nathan to grin in return. Nathan and Thea would eat and watch movies, starting off with the Twilight thing Tommy mentioned a week ago. It started off good, but when Edward began to sparkle he turned it off, and switched movies, much to Thea's amusement. The two would stay up till 2 a.m. till Thea fell asleep. He and carried her to her bed and tucked her in. Docs. Martin was in his office, alone, when a Chinese woman wearing a red dress, with white hair walked in. Thank you for coming. He said. Anything for a friend. The woman replied. We're not friends. You smuggle drugs. I let you use my port. Martin grunted. For which you are paid a lot of money. The woman pointed out. I don't get paid enough to have arrows shot at me by hood-wearing lunatics with demon eyes. Martin shouted, unaware of the woman tensing up at what he said. You need to take this guy seriously. He's a bigger threat than Nechenti ever was. Except, now it's Nechenti's daughter who's the problem. Unlike your friend in the hood, we know where to find her. The woman replied. Don't be an idiot. Take out Emily. Nechenti and Lance will never let this go. She won't stop until she burns you, me and the entire Triad to the ground. Martin retorted. Then we kill Ms. Lance. The woman smirked before she turned around and left. Next day. Queen Manor. Nathan stood in his room, wearing dark blue jeans and brown boots, about to change his shirt, when he paused as a news report for Martin came on. Attorney for shipping magnate Martin Summers confirmed his client has no intention of testifying, maintaining innocence in the death of Victor Nechenti. Nechenti's body was found 4 weeks ago. We'll keep you updated as information becomes available. Nathan scoffed and began to put on his gray long-sleeved Henley when he heard, wait, how did you get those? Don't you knock? Nathan said, putting his shirt on and his brown leather jacket on, as Thea walked over, and turned him to face her and lifted his shirt to see the faded scars on his body. Mom said that there weren't any scars. Because I told her not to say anything. Nathan said, looking down at Thea, who looked at the faded scars on his body. Nathan, what happened to you out there? Thea asked, looking up at him, as he put his shirt down. I'm not ready to talk about it, Thea. Just give me some time, okay? Nathan asked. I want to show you something out back, Thea said, causing Nathan to raise an eyebrow and follow her out. Backyard. Nathan and Thea walked over to 3 large tombstones. As Thea began to speak, sometimes when I felt whatever, I'd come here. About a month after the funerals, Morn stopped going out. Pretty soon she stopped talking altogether. The house got so quiet. So I'd come here to talk to you, Ollie, and Dad. Stupid stuff. Like what I was doing that day, what boy I had a crush on. And then sometimes, I'd ask you, beg you, to find your way home to me. Now here you are. I see glimpses of the old you, but you can't keep shutting me out whenever I get too close. Thea said, looking at Nathan, who frowned. Look, I know it was hell where you were. But it was hell here too. You gotta let me in, Nathan. You gotta let someone in. Nathan looked from Thea to the tombstone as she walked away. Laurel's apartment. Laurel was in her living room working like usual, and eating a TV dinner, when there was knocking at her door, causing her to look up and hesitantly walk to the door before she looked through her peephole and sighed before she opened her door to see Nathan standing there. Hi, are you okay? There are 2 cop cars outside. Nathan said. Didn't you tell me to stay away from you? Laurel asked. Yay. What are you doing here, Nathan? Laurel asked. Getting reacquainted with everyone has been harder than I thought, and my sister said I need to let someone in. Nathan said. And you choose me? Laurel asked. Well, you were the first to offer. And despite what I said, I really don't know how to stay away. Nor do I want to. Nathan sincerely said, causing Laurel to scoff, before she stepped out of the way to allow Nathan into her home. Walking in, Nathan smiled as he looked around. Wow, this place hasn't changed at all. He said before he saw a large fox plushie on the couch, and picked it up, before he turned to Laurel with a raised eyebrow. You still have this? What's in the bag? Laurel asked, snatching the fox from him. Something they wanted to do with you since I came back. Nathan said, opening the bag and pulling out a tub of cookies and cream ice cream, causing Laurel to smile. Eat ice cream. 30 minutes later, Nathan sat on the floor while Laurel sat on the couch, both eating ice cream, with Nathan telling her about how everyone wants him to be the same person he was when he left. I mean, I know that I was dead for 5 years, but I can't be the same exact Nathan that I was when I left. You've been through a lot. Laurel said, remembering from the hearing how Nathan explained what happened when the boat went down and how he got to the island. I know. Everyone keeps asking me what happened on the island, or analyzing every little thing that I do. Hell, my mom told me today that she wanted me to take control of the company. You can tell her no. Laurel said. Oh, I already did. I get the feeling that the subject will be coming back up soon. Nathan sighed, leaning his head back on Laurel's extended leg. It'll be okay. Laurel said, only for Nathan to scoff. Trust me, I have plenty of experience with disapproving parents. I'm on the receiving end of your father's disapproval. Nathan replied, looking at her. He blames himself more than he blames you. Laurel said, causing Nathan to blink. He thinks that, maybe if he and Sarah were closer she would have told him about the boat trip. And he could have stopped her from going with Oliver. I am sorry. You apologized enough already, even though you have nothing to be sorry for. Laurel said, shaking her head. Sure, Sarah and I met you first, but it was my mistake of falling for Oliver, even when I knew how he was. You should forgive him. Nathan looked at Laurel with a raised eyebrow. Can you? He wasn't my brother. Laurel replied. No, he was your boyfriend. The one person who was never meant to hurt you. Yet his actions cost you the life of your sister. Even if the trip had have gone smoothly, things between you and Sarah never would have been the same. Nathan said, shaking his head, the both of you deserved better. I think I understand why she did it. Laurel said, causing Nathan to look at her with a raised eyebrow. When we were kids, Sarah and I wanted to be with you, but you were so dense back then, you couldn't tell. Nathan's eyebrow twitched as Laurel laughed softly. We got into this big fight over you, and my mom told me that to really love someone is to want them to be happy even if it isn't with you. That's why I decided to date Ollie. I still hung out with Sarah while I continued to pine after you, till she gave up on me. Nathan groaned. Or she did it to make you jealous. Laurel said as Nathan put his head down. She knew that we were sleeping together, and I think that her going with Ollie was her form of revenge. So it is my fault. Nathan sighed. No, it's not. If we had just been upfront with you from the beginning, Sarah would have never got on that boat. Laurel said. Nathan nodded, before he paused and sat up. Did you hear that? He asked. What? Laurel asked as Nathan stood up. There's someone on the fire escape. Nathan said, pulling his Gerber Mark II combat knife out of the holster in his boot and walking around the table and grabbing her arm. What? She asked. Hey, come on, Nathan said, taking her with him toward the door just as a man burst through it, causing Laurel to gasp, before Nathan led her to her restroom. Stay down, he said, just as the man got up and started firing his Uzi at them. Making it to the bedroom, a man burst through the window and he immediately led her back out. Nathan looked back to Diggle to see him on his back about to be ran through, and tossed his Gerber at the woman, causing her blade to be knocked out of her hand before she ran off, while Laurel ran into his arms clutching him tightly. Doggy stood up grabbing his gun. When he looked at them, "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm okay," Nathan said. "Are you hurt, Mr. Queen?" Diggle asked. "No," Nathan repeated. "This is why it's a good idea to have a bodyguard," Diggle said before he went to look around for any other intruders. "Hey, you okay?" Nathan asked Laurel, who nodded. Minutes later, Nathan and Diggle were in the living room as police took pictures and detectives took their statements before Quentin came in. "Daddy," Laurel said, hugging her dad. Thank God. Thank God. Are you all right?" Quentin asked, worried. "I'm okay," Laurel said, pulling away and looking at him. "Those cops that you put on me. Quentin struggled but couldn't speak, so he shakes his head. "I went outside to ask for a light and they were both dead in the squad car," Diggle said, causing Laurel to cover her mouth in horror. "It's all right, honey. It's okay," Quentin said, walking over to Diggle. "Mr. Diggle, thank you. You feel free to run as many red lights as you want." "I was doing my job, sir." Diggle nodded, shaking the man's hand. "No, your job is protecting him," Quentin said, glaring at a frowning Nathan, and walked over. "It seems like whenever you're with one of my daughters, people die. You stay away from Laurel, or the next time you disappear, it'll be permanent." "Dad," Laurel said. "No, Laurel," Quentin said, still glaring at Nathan. "With all due respect, Quentin, if Laurel doesn't want me around, that is her decision, and until she tells me to stay away, I will always be there for her," Nathan said before he began to walk away, placing a hand on Laurel's shoulder as he went while Diggle followed and Quentin glared. Unseen by anyone, Nathan turned off a device in his pocket. Later, docks. 6 guards were posted around, all with semi-automatic machine guns, as Nathan in his Arrow uniform stood on a shipping container, and his tactical katana drawn and his Kyuubi eyes glowed in bloodlust. Nathan began to walk toward the closest guard. Martin was in his office, getting his money and all his important documents together while a guard stood there watching him. "That Triad bitch screwed up the hit on Lance. Now the Triad is gonna erase every ounce of evidence of their smuggling operation. Including me. Except that's not gonna happen," Martin said before he looked to the guard. "Tell Wallace to get the boat ready. I'm leaving tonight." Outside, a guard was standing ready when Nathan appeared behind him and snapped his neck. About to proceed to his next victim, he paused when, "Wallace. Wallace, you copy?" Turning around, Nathan walked to the body and found a walkie-talkie and picked it up. "Wallace? I told you, there wouldn't be a second warning," Nathan said, tossing the walkie behind him and continue on his way. "Hey, who's that?" a guard yelled up, seeing Nathan standing there looking down at him and the others. "Kill him," another guard yelled before gunfire rang out, as Nathan shot forward, and blood flew while screams of pain followed. Taking the katana from the last guard's chest, Nathan looked down to see Martin running for his life. "Summers!" Nathan yelled, rushing after him. With Martin ran for his life toward his boat, and glanced back to see Nathan walking after him, which made him scream in fear, before a black and red arrow pierced his left knee, sending him to the ground with a shout of pain. "Oh, God, no, no, no. God can't help you," Nathan said, unsheathing his tactical katana. "So help yourself. I want the truth about Victor Nachenti. I can't. The Triad will kill me." Martin sobbed pathetically and screamed in pain when Nathan broke his right elbow. "I'm going to kill you if you don't do what I tell you," Nathan growled. All right. It wasn't me that killed him. It was the Triad," Martin replied. "Acting on whose instructions?" Nathan asked, only for Martin to remain silent before he screamed in pain when Nathan slowly drew his blade across Martin's other cheek. "Whose? All right. It was mine. All right? Nachenti said he was gonna testify against me," Martin said before Nathan pulled him up and looked into his eyes. "This is for going after Laurel Lance. he said harshly before turning Martin around, and with a precise and harsh strike, broke Martin's lower spine, paralyzing him from waist down, causing him to shriek in agony as he dropped to the ground. 1. Nathan looked over his shoulder when he noticed presence to see the white-haired woman. "Get away from him, Arrow," she said in Chinese. "Or you'll do what, China White?" Nathan asked before the woman swung her hook knife at him, and he leaned back and began to block each swings, and ducked under her roundhouse, and swept her leg from under her, before he was on top of her with his hand around her throat. "So now what? Are you going to kill me?" the woman asked. As if. Nathan answered back in Mandarin, causing the woman to smirk before she pulled down his mask, and looked at his face, which had black hair as opposed to his usual blonde, Kyuubi eyes. His teeth were fangs, and he had thick pronounced whisker marks. All in all, his appearance was dissimilar enough that nobody could tell his real identity. China White smirked before she kissed him lustfully, and he pulled away just as sirens sounded off. "Get out of here." Nathan took his mask, and placed it back on, and she ran just as police entered, and he vanished as well, while Martin, whose broken form was on the ground and had attempted to crawl away, was apprehended. Nathan was headed toward the exit, when Quentin appeared in his way and aimed his gun at his head. The gun was about 6 inches from Nathan's face. "You so much as twitch, and you're dead," Quentin said before he smirked. "I got you." "You sure about that?" Quentin's eyes widened when he was suddenly disarmed and thrown onto his back with the same Krav Maga gun disarm move the Slade had once taught and used on Nathan. Quentin's gun was now pointed at his forehead, causing him to close his eyes and wait for death. "Oh, God, no, no, no," Quentin heard a few moments later, causing him to open eyes to see an arrow with a voice recorder embedded in the pavement, and his gun was right next to him, though it was missing the clip. "God can't help you," Nathan said, unsheathing his tactical katana. "So help yourself. I want the truth about Victor Nachenti." "I can't. The Triad will kill me." Martin sobbed pathetically and screamed in pain when Nathan broke his right elbow. "I'm going to kill you if you don't do what I tell you." Nathan growled. All right. It wasn't me that killed him. It was the Triad," Martin replied. "Acting on whose instructions?" Nathan asked, only for Martin to remain silent before he screamed in pain when Nathan slowly drew his blade across Martin's other cheek. "Whose?" All right. It was mine. It was mine, all right? Nachenti said he was gonna testify against me." "Son of a bitch," Quentin said, standing up and looking around just as more cops and squad cars arrived. Later, the unveiling of the new building went off without any problems. Without Nathan embarrassing his family or himself, he announced the foundations that would be unveiling and spoke to Laurel and Tommy for a bit before leaving. 3 days later, everything had been going slowly and Starling. The only thing noteworthy was that Diggle had quit, having gotten tired of sitting outside as Nathan went into the homes of models and actresses, and had with them. Nathan was not all that broken up about it, since he didn't want some glorified babysitter anyway, but if he knew his mother, then she'd have a replacement soon. Currently Nathan was making short work of security guards who were hired by millionaire James Holder, whose corporation put defective smoke detectors in low-income housing in the Glades, which caused a lot of people to die. Currently, the man was on his balcony by his pool on the phone. "Other than the bill I got handed by my legal team, I'm feeling pretty good. Now that this lawsuit's been settled, we can focus our attention on Unidac Industries. Okay, I'll see you in the office first thing." James went to sip his beer, but a shuriken sliced cleanly through the bottle, causing the bottom to fall to the ground and shatter. Looking up, James saw the vigilante that's been terrorizing some of his associates standing there looking at him. "I have armed security inside. All I have to do is call out." "Go ahead. They can't hear you," Nathan said, dropping 3 blood-stained Glocks. "What the hell do you want?" James asked, looking around to find an escape route. "The courts say you don't owe your victims anything." "I disagree," Nathan said, walking forward before he noticed a red dot on Holder's chest before he was shot and killed, while Nathan rolled away to cover, but not before a bullet lodged itself in his shoulder. On a rooftop across the way, the sniper looked on with interest as he saw the black-hooded archer disappeared. The Arrow lair. Nathan was back at his lair, currently in a pair of black jeans, dark brown biker boots, dark brown belt, and shirtless, showing off his muscular body. He looked at his shoulder with his Kyuubi eyes where he was shot, seeing the poisoned blood be forced out of his body and the bullet slowly work itself out of his shoulder. Nathan pulled up a vial to collect his poisoned blood and after collecting enough, put a stopper on it. He placed the vial in a rack. With a grunt, he put his fingers around the bullet and pulled it out, the wound fully healing a second later. Nathan placed the bullet in a metal tray and cleaned the blood off his shoulder. Nathan poured the blood into a centrifuge and turned it on to separate the poison from his blood. I shouldn't be surprised that James Holder had made more than one enemy. Nathan picked up the bullet he had pulled out of his shoulder. But whoever killed him now has my interest. There are only a few hitmen in the world that lace their bullets with poison. I'm gonna need to figure out who I'm dealing with. Nathan stood up and closed his eyes, concentrating as a red aura covered his form. A minute later, his form split in half, to reveal two Nathans. The original panted heavily and hunched over to catch his breath. Making a clone can be a real pain in the butt. Queen Manor. Nathan left the foundry, while his clone figured out that the bullet was a 7.62mm round laced with curare, and hopped into bed and dozed off in no time. Morning. Nathan walked into the foyer to see Thea sitting on the couch while Moira and Walter talked to the police. Thank you, officers. My wife and I appreciate it. I'll see you out, Walter said, leading the cops away. Thank you, Moira said to the cops, who nodded and left before she looked to Thea, who didn't look bothered. Last time it was public intoxication. This time breaking and entering. My, how we are moving up in the criminal world. Thea stood up smirking. When you pay off the store owner you should check out the merchandise. They got some pretty killer outfits. Thea, go get ready for school. Moira said, annoyed. I was thinking of taking a sick day. Thea replied. Fine, then get some sleep. Moira relented, causing Thea to nod and walk off before she made eye contact with Nathan. Good morning. Thea smirked, walking off as Nathan looked to Moira. Seriously, Mom? Nathan asked. When your sister gets like this, it's best to give her space. Mom, you and Dad, let me and Oliver get away with murder and assault, and look how we both turned out. Thea doesn't need space, she needs a mother. Nathan said, causing Moira to look at him before she cleared her throat and changed the subject as a woman walked in behind Nathan. Right. Nathan, I'd like you to meet Mr. Diggle's replacement, Ms. Lila Michaels. Nathan turned around to see a familiar woman who he had the pleasure of meeting before, looking at him with a small smirk. Hello. She greeted. Nathan smiled fakely and shook her hand. Nice to meet you, he said before he motioned to the exit. Walk with me. Lila nodded and followed Nathan upstairs, and as soon as they were out of sight, he grabbed her by her throat and slammed her into the wall. What the hell do you think you're doing here? He hissed. You really don't waste time, do you? Lila asked, smiling. Enough games, Lila. I told Amanda to stay the hell away from me after Lian Yu and China. Nathan growled. Which is why I'm here. You're still a high-level threat. She just wants to make sure you don't hurt innocent people. Lila said. And she sends her most loyal agent to accomplish this? Nathan asked. She thought you'd be more at ease with someone you already know. Lila said as Nathan gave her a long, hard-searching look before he released her. What happened to your ex-husband? Nathan asked. He was drafted into ARGUS. He has a set of talents that can be useful in field ops. Lila said, causing Nathan to nod. So where are we headed to first, Mr. Queen? Lila asked. Nowhere at the moment. Still looking into something, Nathan said before he decided to take a shower. James Holder's place. SCPD were canvassing the homicide scene, while Quentin watched with a frown. It doesn't make sense, he said, shaking his head. Holder fits the profile. Wealthy dirtbag. Red meat for the hood, plus we recovered one ninja star. His partner Lucas said. Yeah, but this time cause of death is a double tap through the heart and our perp doesn't use firearms. Quentin said. Maybe he's figured out there's easier ways to kill people than with a ninja stars and a sword. And it's like you said, the guy's a whack job. Lucas shrugged. Queen Foundry. Nathan, Lila, and Tommy walked into the foundry and began looking around. What do you think? Great spot for a nightclub or what? Nathan asked. Sweet, but if you're thinking calling it Queen's, I don't think you're gonna get the clientele you were hoping for. Tommy said, causing Nathan to smirk. Private office. Nathan pointed, visualizing his new project. For the private one-on-one meetings, I would imagine. Tommy asked jokingly. Plus, the occasional 2-on-1 meeting. And the rare 3-on-1 meetings. Nathan nodded, causing Tommy to laugh. Man, are you sure you want to do this? Tommy asked. Positive. I always did like making my own money. Nathan said. Fair point. So how about tomorrow night, the two of us go and scope out the competition? There's a new club opening downtown. It's called Poison. Max Fuller owns it. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Max Fuller. He said, getting a nod from Tommy. You do remember exactly what happened between us, right? Come on, man who stays mad at a castaway? Tommy asked. The castaway that slept with his mother and fiancé. At the same time, Nathan replied. Ah, I'm sure he'd over it by now. Tommy said, causing Nathan to raise an eyebrow as Tommy checked his phone. Oh man, I gotta roll. See you later, man. I'm surprised you're hanging with him after he slept with Laurel. Lila said when Tommy was gone. That has nothing to do with me. Nathan shrugged before he turned to Lila. So what do you think? I think it'll be a good cover for what you're really doing at night, even though you don't need one, seeing as you can clone yourself. Lila shrugged. This place will draw lots of people in to be my alibi, instead of just my bodyguard and family. It's only a matter of time before Quentin gets suspicious about my returning and a vigilante just up and appearing, with me being the first to see him. Nathan said, causing Lila to nod in understanding, as Nathan made a note to do something about that. The vigilante and Nathaniel Queen should never be in the same conversation. You know what happens if you go down, right? Amanda will immediately try to get you to join ARGUS. You're the only person who has ever been able to fully adapt to the Mirakuru without any negative side effects, which makes you the perfect acid in her mind. So perfect that she ordered you and some of the other female ARGUS agents to go to extreme lengths to try to get my DNA. Nathan said. Unsuccessfully, but you can admit it was fun. Lila said, smirking at Nathan, who scoffed, smiling before the two walked away. Next day, SCPD. Quentin was looking over the timeline for Fox when Lucas walked in, got ballistics back on the Holder murder. They pulled two 7.62mm bullets out of him. According to stippling and size of the entry wound, they estimate shots were fired from 100 yards away. 100 yards? So the hood shoots him from another building, goes over to his place, he takes out his security, then fires a few arrows? Quentin asked skeptically. And according to his tox screen, his blood contains strychnose toxifera. Lucas nodded. What? Quentin asked, raising an eyebrow. Curare. It's a kind of poison. Oh, okay, so now we switch from arrows and ninja weapons to sniper bullets and poison. I'm not buying it, Quentin said, shaking his head as he stood up and began to leave. We still found ninja stars on the scene. Solid evidence the hood was there. Lucas said, watching as Quentin walked off. Where are you going? I'm going to get my own evidence. Quentin said, leaving, causing Luca to sigh and take a seat. With Nathan's clone. The clone looked around as he in the arrow costume and entered a large Asian-style mansion. He snuck past the armed men and entered a large room to find who he was looking for, and Nathan focused on the beautiful white-haired woman. Hello Chian, it's been a while. Arrow, I hear you've been keeping yourself busy in Starling City since we ran into each other. China White said playfully, hiding what she was really thinking. Yes, and what a pleasant encounter that was. I heard you had been made Dragon's Head of the Starling branch. Congrats, by the way. It not really official yet. Jashan is still helping me with the transition. Nathan nodded. Are you busy? For my favorite partner? Never. What do you need? China White asked. Last night, a target of mine was shot and killed. The sniper left this behind. Nathan said, tossing the bullet over to China White, who looked it over. It's laced with curare. The man who uses it goes by the name Deadshot. I know the Triad has used his services before. I just need to know where he lays his head at night. Consider it done, but I will be expecting a favor in return. After all, I don't do anything for free. China White said before Nathan smiled and snuck out. Next day, Queen Manor. Walter and Moira were meeting with Quentin, while Lila stood in the doorway. It's a great loss. Carl was a titan, Walter said, a titan who was looking to buy out a company called Unidac Industries. Lucas asked, standing by Quentin. Well, industries are something of a misnomer. Ul's recent activity was actually looking into alternative energy. Walter said, the point my partner is trying to make is that Rasmussen was the second bidder this week to lose his life. Quentin said, are you implying something, detective? Moira asked. Well, only that your husband's looking into buying Unidac Industries, and the competition seems to be dropping like flies. Quentin said, And I'm sure your veiled accusation has nothing to do with how you feel about my family. Moira replied only for Quentin to huff. Unidix in receivership, detective. Walter said getting Quentin's attention, ownership is subject to a liquidation auction, so that means there are many prospective buyers. And the auction's tomorrow, so if I was taking out the competition I have a lot of killing to do in a very short amount of time. We're just making rounds with interested buyers. Let them know to be careful. Lucas said. Oh, yes. And I'm overwhelmed that Detective Lance is concerned for our safety. Moira said sarcastically, causing Quentin's frown to deepen. Well, thank you for your concern, gentlemen. Our security consultant, Ms. Michaels, is taking all the necessary precautions. Walter said. Yeah, right. Well, if you need us, we're just a 911 call away. Quentin said, getting up and walking off with his partner. Later, Poison, Nathan, Lila, and Tommy walked into the club. Oh, my, this is gonna be killer. Tommy said. If Max Fuller sees me here, I agree. Nathan sighed. If you want to run a business, you gotta take a few risks. Tommy said. Laurel was at the bar watching her friend who was dancing, when she saw Tommy and Nathan walk up. Oh, wow. Doesn't you going out and having fun violate some kind of law like the ones that are carved on a stone tablet? Tommy said. That's cute, Tommy. Laurel said as Nathan ordered a drink. Thanks. Tommy smiled. I can see you two are up to your old hunting patterns. Laurel said. Actually, this is strictly for business. Nathan said. Really? Laurel asked. Sure is. Merlin thought, why not scope out the competition? Although I get the feeling when Max Fuller sees me I'll be out of here very quickly. Nathan said. Well, look at this. Nathan Queen. He heard and turned to the owner. Max Fuller. How you been? Happy you drowned. Max glared, before he smirked and looked at Tommy and Laurel. I see nothing has changed. You were forced to watch Laurel and Oliver together, now your brother's girl has moved on to your best friend. Laurel's and Tommy's eyes widened. Look man, you're a grown man, Tommy. Nathan interrupted, looking to Tommy. If you and Laurel want to be together, that isn't any of my business. He said before he looked to Max. So Max, how's your mom and fiancé? Son of a bit. Max had immediately threw a punch at Nathan, who moved and grabbed his arm before throwing him over the bar into the bottles of liquor on the shelves. Oh, Laurel yelled, as everyone turned to see Nathan get rushed by the two security guards who punched him in the stomach and grabbed him by his neck before Lila showed up and kicked the guy with Nathan's neck in his grip in the nuts and slammed his head on the bar, knocking him out, before she tased the other man. Thanks. Nathan smirked as he rolled his neck. Just doing my job, sir. Lila said as Nathan nodded and looked to Laurel and Tommy. I think that's enough excitement for one night. Nathan said, turning and leaving before Tommy and Laurel caught up with him outside. Nathan, wait. Laurel called, causing Nathan to stop and look at her and Tommy. Look man, what happened between us is none of my business. Nathan interrupted Tommy. Look, we're all adults here. What happens between you both is between you both. Have a good night. Nathan turned and got into his car before Lila pulled off, leaving the two to watch after him. With Nathan's phone buzzed, causing him to sigh as he answered. Yeah? I got your information. His name is Floyd Lawton. I have the address for where he stayed last time he was in Starling City. But that is all. China White said. Let's hope he's a creature of habit. His address is 1700 Broadway, Pape Motel, room 52. Thank you. I will repay that favor once I've dealt with him. Nathan said. Going hunting? Lila asked as Nathan hung up. Seems that way. Nathan said. Pape Motel. Floyd Lawton sat at his laptop looking at blueprints, with his TV on mute, cracking his neck. As it was getting too stiff, he suddenly paused and his eyes widened before he ducked as a kunai cut a few hairs from his head, before he threw his arm up, and his wrist turrets opened fire at Nathan who ducked behind cover and began firing arrows at Lawton. Lawton, seeing that his bullets weren't hitting their target, reached under his bed, as he kept firing, and rolled a grenade to Nathan, who looked down as Lawton smirked, holding the pin before he jumped out of the window. Boom! Panic ensued when the motel room exploded, while on a rooftop on the building next to it, Nathan stood perfectly still, before he looked down to the bullet-riddled laptop, and jumped across the rooftops, as sirens cut through the air. Next morning, Queen Consolidated. Nathan walked into the IT department with the laptop, and stopped at the desk of the IT girl he had winked at a few days ago. Felicity Smoke? he asked, getting her attention. "Hi. I'm Nathan Queen. Of course. I know who you are, you're Mr. Queen." Felicity said. "No, Mr. Queen was my father." Nathan replied. "Right, but he's dead. I mean, he drowned." Felicity said, causing Nathan to raise an eyebrow. "You didn't, which means you could come down to the IT department and listen to me babble." Felicity blushed as she carried on while Nathan smiled, "Which will end in 3, 2, 1. I was wondering if you could salvage anything from this laptop I found." Nathan said, handing her the laptop. Are these bullet holes?" Felicity asked. I'm interested in who the owner was, and what kind of trouble he was planning on getting into." Nathan said. Sure," Felicity said, causing Nathan to nod. Queen Manor. Thea was in her room, on her bed texting her friends, when Moira walked in carrying 2 dresses before she stopped in surprise seeing Thea. "Wow. Well, good, you're here. I'm under house arrest, remember?" Thea said, still texting. "Do you want to wear the Calvin Klein or the Zac Posen?" Moira asked, holding up the dresses, causing Thea to look at her in confusion. "To dinner?" Thea asked with a raised eyebrow. "I was just gonna wear pajamas." "To Walter's stock auction," Moira said. "I think I'd rather be grounded." Thea replied. "No, it's important that you come." Moira said, only for Thea to roll her eyes. "Important to whom?" Thea asked, going back to texting. "To me," Moira said, looking at her daughter, who scoffed, before she put down the dresses and walked over to Thea and placed a hand on her knee as she sat on the bed. "All right. Listen to me," she said, causing Thea to look up at her. "When you were 4 years old, you came home one day with a cat. It was a stray, it was filthy, and it was mean. But you stood there and you declared that it was coming to live with us. Your father came home from the office and he saw what was going on, and he sat you down and he explained to you that the cat was in fact a tiger and that we needed to get it home. And somehow you understood. Robert was always so good at getting through to you, and I was always so jealous of that. You never talk about him," Thea said as Moira wiped her tear-filled eyes. "Dad. That's the first time you talked about him in years. Well, I think you and I have gotten into some bad habits. There's been a lot that has changed recently, Thea, and I think that maybe this can change too." Moira smiled softly before she got up and walked away. Queen Consolidated. Nathan was with Felicity, who was scrolling through blueprints. "It looks like blueprints," Felicity noted. "Do you know what of?" Nathan asked. "The Exchange Building," Felicity said. "Never heard of it," Nathan replied. "It's where the Unidac Industries auction is scheduled to take place," Felicity said before she looked to Nathan. "Whose laptop is this again?" "Why you ask?" Nathan asked. "Mr. Steele is trying to buy Unidac Industries. And you've got a company laptop associated with one of guys he's competing against." "Floyd Lawton," Nathan said. "No, Warren Patel." "Who's Floyd Lawton?" "He is an employee of Mr. Patel, evidently." Nathan sighed before he stood up. "Thank you, Ms. Smoke. I think I need to take a trip to SCPD." Sure. You need help with anything else, come on down. Not that I'm saying you need permission, since this is your company, I'm just saying. You're cute." Nathan smiled, causing her to blush, as he took the laptop. "See you next time," he said, turning and leaving his smile turning into a frown. The Exchange Building is surrounded by 3 towers with eye lines into the building. Lawton can get his kill shot off from virtually anywhere. I only have 1 clone, so I can't be reliant on him if Lawton got a shot off. I'll need some help later. SCPD. Quentin was walking to his car, when a hand reached from the shadows and grabbed him by his collar and slammed him up against the wall, with his feet hanging off the ground. "You son of a bitch. You've got a pair on you, pulling this, outside a police station." Floyd Lawton's the one targeting the buyers interested in Unidac. Interpol calls him Deadshot because he never misses. "You can look this up after I go," Nathan said. "Yeah, and stop chasing you, I suppose? I don't care if you continue or quit. You're wasting your time and energy, not mine," Nathan said. "You will never catch me, detective." Nathan taunted before saying, "Warren Patel hired Lawton. I can't be sure who they're targeting, might be the buyers, and I can't protect them in a space that big. I need your help." "Hey, yeah? Professional help?" Quentin said, frowning. "Lawton laces his bullets with curare. Tell your men to wear Kevlar," Nathan said. "All them to shoot you." Quentin was rendered silent when Nathan tossed him into his car, where the laptop was placed on the hood. Quentin grabbed his gun and turned to see Nathan was gone, and began to look around. The Exchange Building. Walter and Moira stood in the lobby with the other buyers as Moira looked around. "Well, it's quite a turnout." Moira said. "Well, it's quite an opportunity, actually. But regardless of the outcome of the auction, I'm already a winner because I have two beautiful women at my side tonight." Walter smiled. "Two?" Moira asked, raising an eyebrow, only for Walter to look up towards the door. Following his line of sight, she saw Thea walking over. "Thanks for coming, Thea. It means a lot to your mother. And me." Walter smiled as Moira and Thea hugged before he looked over when his name was called. "Mr. Steele, the auction will be opening in 5 minutes. Please make sure your bid is ready." "Thank you, Gina." Walter smiled before he looked to Moira and Thea. "Shall we?" When they nodded, the trio walked off. Nathan in Arrow uniform was on the roof, looking down at his family. He watched as the cops arrested Warren Patel, before his clone, who had taken his place at the event, walked in and mingled with the others, watching his clone blend perfectly with everyone and not show a sign of anything being wrong. Nathan blinked when a red dot appeared on Walter's chest, and quickly turned to the construction site across the way, and rushed toward the source as a gunshot went off, causing him to stop and see that Quentin had tackled Walter before he could get hit. But Floyd continued to fire at the other buyers as his clone was lead out along with his family by Lila. Nathan jumped off the roof and into the construction building, causing glass to shatter from the window before he rolled out of the way. When Floyd opened fire with his wrist turrets, behind a pillar, Nathan jumped to the rafters and watched as Floyd cautiously tried to find him. "Put your weapons down," Nathan said. "I admire your work, Arrow. Who would have thought after you disappeared 6 months ago, this is where you'd be hiding? Guess you won't be extending me any professional courtesy." Deadshot commented dryly. "We're not in the same line of work. Your profession is murder. You've taken lives," he pointed out, "in service to a greater cause. You're only looking to get paid," Nathan said, before he dropped behind Floyd, who turned to shot him but shouted in pain, when Nathan slashed through his scope and his eye with his tactical katana, and stabbed him in the gut, causing him to groan before he fell back as Nathan twirled his blade, tossing the blood off of it, before he vanished into the night. Later, Nathan, in civilian clothing, appeared back in the mansion of China White. He snuck in through the bedroom window. He found China was already waiting for him, wearing black silk robe and black lace underwear, which contrasted nicely with her white hair. "I take it the information I provided for you proved useful," Qian stated curtly. Qian will wear her hairstyle from episode 15 for the rest of the story. "Yes, Deadshot has been neutralized, and Warren Patel will go to jail, so a job well done," Nathan said. "I do hope we can continue to work together. I kinda miss the old days, back when we were enforcers for the Hong Kong Triad." "Then why did you leave?" Qian said, turning around. There was a sadness in her eyes. "You were the dragon's head of the Hong Kong branch of the Triad. Under you, Triad rose to heights it had never seen, and then you vanished without trace. You left us. You left me." "I'm sorry," Nathan said, slowly walking closer to her. "I know that I left when I should not have. I wanted to stay. I really did. But I swore in my father's grave that I would protect this city. This city is my home. It always will be, and I will protect it for as long as I can." "But Qian," Nathan said, taking off his jacket and tossing it to the floor, "my desire to return to my home and protect it didn't change my feelings for you. I mean, sure, back 2010, we were trying to kill each other, then we ended up working together when I joined the Triad, then we became lovers. I didn't stay with the Triad all that time because I actually liked what I was doing. I stayed solely because I knew how important it was to you." Now, Nathan and Qian stood a few inches apart, "Because I loved you then. I never expected to fall in love with someone who tried to kill me, but I did, and I still love you now." Qian stared into his eyes, her mind swimming with memories of many of the dark things the both of them had to do as enforcers for the Triad. Qian had been a cold killer at the time, who had not known what fun was since she was a child. As a child, Qian was abused by her parents for trying to have fun with her toys. However, her future mentor Jishan rescued her, shooting her parents through the chest. This ultimately led to her being bullied for it. One day while at school, she broke and stabbed a classmate with a pen. Shocked at what she had done, Qian took up the tutelage of the man who had killed her parents. Before this, however, she soaked her hair in hydrogen peroxide, turning her hair fully white, forever. She had forgotten what fun was until Nathan came along. When they weren't on the job, He was taking her out on the town to have fun. At first it was just so they could get along. They had not gotten along at first, but she slowly warmed up to his confident, warm, fun-loving side that he only showed in private. This fun side of his allowed her to develop a truly meaningful and healthy relationship and help her develop interests and hobbies outside of the Triad. He helped her go from a cold, heartless killer to being an actual person, and she fell for him. But then he left, and she threw herself back into her work, suffering a relapse in her emotional development, especially when she transferred to the Starling Triad. She barely stopped herself from breaking down when she saw him a week ago, though she lost her restraint when she kissed him, and just earlier yesterday, and now having him in her room, was bringing all those old feelings back to the surface. And hearing him tell her that he still loved her, caused her to abandon her restraint. "I still love you too," Sheehan admitted before threw her arms around his neck and kissed him passionately. Nathan returned the passionate kissing with equal fervor, his arms wrapping around her waist. They separated so Nathan could take off his shirt, and he slipped his hands inside her robe and unclasped her bra, letting it fall to the floor while her black silk robe was still on her. She immediately recaptured his lips before going down to his neck, and kissing down toward his waist. Laurel had immediately rushed over when she heard about the shooting, and after making sure that the Queen family was safe, she walked to the room of the one she was truly concerned about, and saw his door was open, and found him sitting on his bed, brooding. "Nate," Laurel said. Nate looked up to see Laurel standing there in his doorway. He noticed the concern on her face and it touched him that she cared. "Hey, Laurel," Nathan said, getting up, "what are ya doing here? I heard about the shooting. I wanted to make sure you weren't hurt." "Well, thanks for that." Nathan smiled sadly at her. "I wasn't sure you would." "Why would you think that?" Laurel asked, a bit surprised by his revelation. Nate grew hesitant at her question, and seeing this, Laurel sat on his bed next to him. "Hey, it's okay, Nate. I promise, I won't judge you." After a few more moments of hesitation, he looked at her. "Laurel, I spent 5 years on Lian Yu, that's the name of the island that I was on. I was alone over there. But the loneliness wasn't the worst thing that happened. I want to tell you about it. Out of everyone, I want to tell you, but I'm afraid that if I do, you'll..." He hesitated again and Laurel said, "Oh, what, Nate?" Finally, he relented, saying with a tortured look in his eyes, "That you'll look at me like I'm nothing more than damaged goods." Laurel nodded as she placed her hand on Nathan's cheek and said to him, "Nate, I would never think that of you." There was a moment of silence between them before Nathan broke it. "Listen about the other nig mmhh." Nathan began but was silenced when Laurel kissed him. Unable to help herself, Nathan returned the kiss and brought her onto his lap, and squeezed her ass firmly, causing her to moan as she ran her hands through his hair, before he stood up and turned around, tossing her down onto the bed, causing her to smile. As he crawled onto the bed, and the two began kissing, with light petting, and cuddled on the bed, before they dozed off. Nathan awoke in the middle of the night to see that Laurel had left, causing him to sigh, before he stood up and walked downstairs to grab a snack, but paused when he saw Thea watching TV with a large bowl of chips, and decided to join her. There were no signs of forced entry or any evidence of a struggle, but hours later, the police found the blood-stained kitchen knife in the trunk of Peter Declan's car. The news report said, "Couldn't sleep either?" Thea asked as Nathan moved her feet and sat down, placing them in his lap. "No. What are you watching?" Nathan asked. "Peter Declan," Thea said, getting a raised eyebrow from Nathan. "Oh, a guy who killed his wife. This guy killed his wife in their baby's room. Psycho. Okay, we were just shot at, not something I'm interested in at the moment," Nathan said, taking the remote and turning to something called American Dad. "Hey, give it back," Thea said as she tried to take the remote, but Nathan held it out of her reach before she found herself in his lap, struggling to get the remote back, as she leaned forward to take the remote before he chuckled and handed it back to her, causing her to get off of him and turn back to the news. Declan's execution is set for midnight 2 days from now. Camille Declan's former employer, Jason Brodeur, released a statement saying, quote, "I hope this gives Camille the peace she deserves." Nathan gained a dark look in his eyes, as Jason Brodeur was on the list, which meant he needed to look into this. "So why can't you sleep?" Thea asked, a blush still on her cheeks. "I can't sleep anymore," Nathan said, before looking at Thea's confused look. "Nightmares? About?" Thea asked. "Laurel. So why don't you make a play? I mean, she did come over here just to make sure you didn't get shot." There are reasons, Nathan said. What are they? Besides Oliver sleeping with her sister and her sister dying and her father hating your guts. Those are the top ones. Along with the fact Tommy is in love with her. Nathan said, causing Thea to nod. Before Nathan brought her closer to him and kissed her head. I know that it might not seem like it sometimes, but I'm not the same person I used to be. He sighed, laying his head onto hers, and she cuddled up to him. So show her. Be yourself. I mean, your new self. Thea said, causing Nathan to look thoughtful. Morning. Foundry. Nathan was looking up all the info on the Declan case. How the husband, Peter, had no alibi, and all evidence pointed to him killing his wife. Nathan didn't believe it for a second. Nathan knew that he was telling the truth. Besides, evidence could always be planted by the real killer. The man was going to need a good attorney. With Laurel. Laurel had spent the day at work trying to focus on her case, but her mind kept going back to her visit with Nathan yesterday. When she had woke up, she felt exactly like she had the two of them had slept together. Safe, but then guilt was felt right after, seeing as Tommy had said he was going to try to be a man she deserved, and it felt like she was stringing him along. Because while she felt something for Tommy, she wasn't sure what it was, and what she felt for Nathan had only grown stronger since he returned to Starling, and Lord knows what her dad would try if she started dating the last male queen. With a sigh, she stood up and began to pack up her stuff while her friend Joanna walked over. So I take it there's absolutely no point in asking if you'd like to grab a drink. I can't. I have to go over transcripts for the Fernandez case. Laurel said, putting on her bag. You know, if you go somewhere that's not work or your home, your odds of meeting someone increase by a gazillion%. Joanna said as Laurel began to walk toward the door. That's not true. I could still get mugged on the way home. Laurel replied, looking back to her friend who smiled. In that case, I hope he's cute and single. Joanna retorted. Good night, Joanna. Laurel smiled, leaving. 30 minutes later, Laurel arrived home, and tried to turn on the lights, and frowned when they wouldn't come on. So cautiously she walked deeper into her apartment, into her living room at her desk, and reached into her bottom drawer and pulled out the gun her father gave her, and turned around to see in the hallway was the hooded vigilante. Good evening, Laurel. Nathan greeted. Don't move. Laurel ordered, fear in her voice, and Nathan raised his hands, showing that he didn't have a weapon in hand. Relax, I'm not gonna hurt you. Nathan said, advancing slowly. Stay back. My father is a cop. You are making a huge mistake. Laurel said as she watched the vigilante that dad had been chasing. I'm not the person you think I am, and I need your help. Peter Declan is gonna be executed in 48 hours. I have reason to believe that the man's innocent. Declan's wife was gonna blow the whistle on Brodeur. Brodeur had her murdered, Nathan said, now in front of Laurel, whose gun was now pressed up against his chest. There are 1,000 lawyers in Starling City. Why me? Laurel asked. We're both trying to help. Nathan said. What makes you so sure I'm gonna help you? Because I know you'd do anything to save the life of an innocent man. Nathan said as he walked around her toward the exit, but paused before he looked at her. Next time when there is an intruder, do not hesitate to pull the trigger. Laurel turned to look at the vigilante only to see him gone. Next day, Iron Heights Prison. Laurel was in a room with Peter Declan, who was looking at a photo of his daughter. A jury has found you guilty, Mr. Declan. Laurel said. The evidence was stacked against me, but I didn't kill my wife. I didn't take my daughter's mother from her. Declan said, leaning forward with the picture of his daughter. The murder weapon was a knife from your kitchen with your prints on it. It was found, along with Camille's blood, in the trunk of your car. Your neighbors said they heard an argument that night. Laurel replied as Declan stood up and began to pace. We had a knockdown fight over Jason Brodeur. Camille worked for him and his company had been dumping toxic waste into the glades. Camille told me she'd gone and told a supervisor about it. I was afraid for my family's safety. And we argued very loudly, yes. Izzy started crying, so Camille went and stayed in her room. Declan explained before he sat back down. In the morning, I went to apologize and that's when I found her. So I just grabbed Izzy and I ran outside and I called 911. I'm innocent, Ms. Lance. Later, SCPD. Laurel was looking at a photo of the vigilante when her dad walked up to her with a folder. Well, I wasn't the lead on this, but from what I recall we had fingerprints, we had blood, we got motive, everything. Brodeur seems like the type of guy with resources needed to frame someone. Laurel said, turning to face her dad and taking the folder before she began to look through it. Laurel, in 24 hours, Peter Declan is lying down with a needle in his arm, and not getting up. If I thought we didn't have the right guy, you think I'd be doing anything now except get at what really happened? Quentin asked. Declan said his wife went to her supervisor with allegations that Brodeur was dumping toxic waste. Laurel said, looking at a statement. Yeah, but that supervisor, he said that never happened. Quentin replied, taking the folder, let me see. What was his name? Here you go. Istuk, Matt L.S. took. He said he didn't even see Camille that day. Happy now? Yes. Laurel smiled before he stood up and began to leave. I thought it'd be cold day in hell before you started defending criminals. Quentin said, looking to his daughter who turned to him. I'm not convinced that Declan is a criminal. Like you said, he's on a clock. Can't leave any stone unturned. Laurel said, before he left as Quentin frowned. Elsewhere, Thea and her friends were leaving school, talking and laughing before Thea noticed Nathan leaning on a matte black Koenigsegg Agera R. What are you doing here? Thea asked, walking over and ignoring how her friends were looking at Nathan. I thought I'd hang with my little sister for a bit. Nathan smiled, which she returned. Whose car is that? Thea asked. Mine, Nathan said, walking around to the driver's seat. All those years on an island hasn't dulled your love for fast cars, I see. So how fast is this one? Thea asked, looking it over. 0-62 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds. Nathan smiled, getting in, and when Thea closed the door he sped off. With Laurel. While Nathan and Thea were out on the town, Laurel was busy looking over files on the Declan case, while Joanna walked over. You really are putting a lot of hours into this Declan thing. You actually think he's innocent? Someone does, Laurel said, still looking at the files. So you said, but you didn't say was who. Joanna replied, causing Laurel to bite her bottom lip and look around before she walked up to her friend and smiled. A guardian angel. Joanna blinked and crossed her arms over her chest. The guy in the hood? Wah? You're kidding. He tracked me down, asked me to look into the case. Laurel said. But you've met him? Joanna asked, causing Laurel to nod. But he goes against everything that I was ever taught to believe in. He breaks the law and God knows what else. Laurel said. How are you not afraid he won't do God knows what to you? Joanna asked, worried for her friend's safety. He won't. I don't know, I can feel it. Laurel said assuredly. When I told you to meet someone, this is far, far away from what I meant. Joanna sighed. Later, Laurel was now on a rooftop, looking over the city, and saw the vigilante standing on ledge overlooking the city. I got your message. She said, is there a reason we can't do this face to face? Your dad is a cop. Nathan said, as if that explained everything. You've met with Peter Declan. You were right. He might be innocent. Declan said his wife blew whistle on Brodeur the day she was murdered. Laurel said, then we need to get whoever she told about Brodeur to testify. Nathan replied, he already has. Matt L.S. took, Camille's supervisor. Only he says that she didn't say a word to him. Laurel reported, he's probably lying. Well, if he is, then he's very convincing. He had the jury and police believing him. Laurel said, he hasn't been questioned by me. Nathan said, turning to leave. Hey, I didn't become a lawyer to break the law or hurt anybody. Laurel said, causing Nathan to stop and look at her over his shoulder. I do whatever is necessary to protect the people of Starling City. I am what people like Peter Declan need. Nathan said, if what you're doing isn't wrong, then why are you hiding your face with a mask? Laurel asked, to protect the ones I care about, from the enemies I make. Nathan said, that sounds lonely. Laurel noted, it can be. Nathan said, jumping off the roof, causing Laurel to gasp before she ran over to the ledge only to see he was gone. Elsewhere, Matt Istuk was walking to his brand new Porsche, putting his suitcase in. Before he got in himself, he started his car, but jumped in fear when he saw a black hood in his backseat before darkness was all he knew. Moments later, Matt groaned and blinked before he screamed in fear, as he found himself dangling off the side of the building he was exiting. Oh my God! He yelled before he looked to his legs to see his ankle being held by the hoodman that attacked him. Matt L.S. took. You have failed this city, Nathan said, his blood-red eyes and slit pupils glowing in the dark with his new lower face mask. An. His costume is still the same as the one from Chapter 1, but I changed the lower face mask to be the same as Bucky Barnes' Winter Soldier without the goggles. What are you doing? I've done nothing wrong. Peter Declan. Your lies have put him on death row. Now, either it's time to tell me the truth, or I drop you 30 stories to your death. Nathan said. Oh, God, okay, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Matt nodded. Quickly now, my arm is getting tired. Nathan said. Okay. Brodeur paid me to say that Camille never spoke to me. But I didn't have anything to do with her death. Oh, God, please get me down. I'll do anything. Matt pleaded only for Nathan to hold him out further. You can have the file. What file? Nathan asked. Camille gave me a file of evidence against Jason Brodeur. Let me go, and I'll tell you. Matt said only to nearly lose his shit, when Nathan tossed him up and caught his ankle again. Hurry up, my arm is really tired. Nathan yawned. Okay, it's in my desk. The file, it's in my desk at the office. You can have it, Matt said before Nathan tossed him onto the roof, and Matt breathed heavily before he looked back only to see that he was alone. With Laurel. Laurel was alone at her office, working in her case when the lights went out, causing her to stand up and look around before she jumped when a folder was dropped on her desk. Compliments of Matt Ls. took. Nathan said, causing her to face him. What's in here? Laurel asked. Leverage on Jason Brodeur. Nathan answered as Laurel looked through the file. Before she smiled at him. Should be enough to save Peter Declan's life. As an attorney, I never would have gotten a file like this. Laurel said, amazed as she looked at Nathan. I always thought the law was sacred. It fixed everything. Now I feel like there's too many people in this city who only care about themselves. People who are selfish. I think they need someone who cares about the lives of other people. Someone like you. Let's hope not. What I do, Laurel, while it gets results, it's still dark and crosses a lot of lines. I do what I do to protect the innocence of this city, and sometimes that means soiling my hands in blood. All in the pursuit to help others. Laurel said. Have a nice night, Laurel. Nathan said, leaving as the lights turned back on, while Laurel smiled and sat down biting her bottom lip. Later, after going home to sleep and take a shower, Laurel immediately went back to work upon waking up. Currently she was at her desk, when her dad walked up. Hey, you look busy. Is that the Declan case? There was a funny development on that. Quentin said, sitting on her desk as she looked up to him. Matt Ls. took. He filed a police report. He said the hood harassed him last night. And that's funny, because I gave my daughter Ls. took's name. Dad, Laurel began, but Quentin leaned forward angrily. He's a vigilante. He's a damn criminal, and you working with him. That makes you an accessory. Quentin interrupted. I'm trying to save an innocent man's life. Laurel defended, standing up. No, you're breaking the law. Quentin retorted, standing up as well. I wouldn't have to go outside the law if the police had done their damn job right in the first place. Laurel snapped, causing Quentin to frown as he paused. I asked you how you got this case. You lied to me straight to my face. I thought you and I didn't do that. Guess I was wrong, Quentin said before he stormed off while Laurel watched. Later, courthouse. Laurel was with the judge, who was looking through the file. Your Honor, the mere existence of the file proves that Mr. Istuk perjured himself for Jason Brodeur's benefit. Laurel said. That's slander. The two women turned to see a lawyer, Jason Brodeur, and a big Russian walk-in, Jared Swanstrom, Your Honor. I represent Jason Brodeur and Brodeur Chemical. The interests of justice requires you to stay the defendant's execution pending exploration of the newly discovered evidence. Laurel said, looking to the judge. Ours isn't a court of justice. It's a court of law. And under the law, your evidence is insufficient to warrant a stay of execution. Your motion for habeas corpus is denied. The judge said, causing Laurel to frown before she walked toward the exit but stopped in front of the smirking millionaire. This isn't over. I've got the loose end now. And no matter what happens, I'll pull on it until your whole world unravels. Laurel said before she walked off, roughly pushing past the man. Later, with Jason. Jason was pacing in his office, freaking out. Declan's lawyer is pulling me into this. I'm gonna go to prison, if not for murder, then this dumping thing, he said to his lawyer and bodyguard. That won't happen. There are steps we can take. His bodyguard Ankov said. You saw her. She's going after me. Jason yelled, panicking. She'll want to meet with her client after what happened in court today. We have friends up in Iron Heights. Prison can be a dangerous place. Ankov said, causing Jason to nod. Elsewhere, Nathan was on the roof with Laurel, who filled him in on what happened. It appears we're not done yet. Nathan said. I'm an attorney. Trust me, we're done. Laurel said, causing Nathan to sigh. What do you need to free Peter Declan? Nathan asked after a moment. At this point, nothing short of a signed confession from Brodeur. Laurel said, causing Nathan to shrug and walk off. Where are you going? To get you that confession. Later, Jason's office. Jason was against the wall, in his office, as Nathan stood in front of him. Jason Brodeur, you have failed this city. What do you want? Jason asked, taking deep breaths. You'll confess you arranged to have Peter Declan's wife murdered. Nathan stated simply. What, so I can take his place in prison? Jason asked. So you can avoid the death penalty. Nathan said before Jason smirked. Except if I'm dead, well, then you got no one to pin Camille's murder on. You need me to exonerate Peter Declan. You are a naive fool. Nathan said, pulling out a kunai. Listen, maybe you could try to force me to sign a confession or something. Jason screamed as Nathan stabbed him through the shoulder. That might be difficult, Nathan said, ripping his knife free before he grabbed Jason and slammed him onto the ground and stomped on his wounded shoulder before he kneeled down, forcing his foot down, causing the man to scream before tears of pain were seen by Nathan. Are you crying? Buck up, Mr. Brodeur, you're in for a long night. Now choose, fingers or teeth? Okay, fine, I did it. I ordered the hit on Declan's wife, please just stop. Brodeur cried out, unaware that he was being recorded. Jason's phone began to ring, causing Nathan to sigh, and he pulled the man's phone out and held it to his mouth. What? Jason looked up in shock when his voice came from the man stepping on him. It's Ankov. It's going down. 1 hour. Nathan crushed the phone and tossed it away before he looked down at Jason. What's going down in an hour? Jason looked away, but shouted and began to cry when Nathan stuck his finger in his shoulder wound. All right. We made a plan. What plan? Nathan asked as the man sobbed under him and forced his finger deeper into the wound. Start talking. We're going to stage a riot in Iron Heights, and in the confusion Peter and his bitch lawyer will be dead. Jason yelled before he was knocked unconscious. Laurel, Nathan said in worry, rushing off. Iron Heights. Peter was scared and frustrated as Laurel tried to talk to him. Okay, you have to listen to me. We still have a shot. You remember the friend I mentioned? The one who believes in you. He's working on something. Outside, a guard on duty was keeping his eye on the perimeter but didn't see the figure that sped across the field and jumped over the gate, before it sped into the prison. Inside. No, I told you, Jason Brodeur is powerful. I've been here before. These lawyers holding out these little nuggets of hope. Peter said just as the lights went out and alarms blared as cells were opened. Laurel stood up and looked around to see guards were running to respond. What the? Quote. The warden is setting up a secure perimeter in C block. Stay here. The guard with her and Peter said before he left. Wait. Laurel yelled, looking outside to see the officer get grabbed before 4 inmates began to kick the cap out of him. All throughout the cell block the inmates that were out of their cells attacked the nearest guard, and Laurel happened upon a young-looking guard get stomped on by a big guy who looked up and smiled at her, while the other inmates still in cells cheered and leered at her as they pulled the unconscious guard to the cell to grab his keys. The inmate began to advance on her before an arrow found its way into his heart, and Laurel and Peter turned to see Nathan dressed as a security guard with a ski mask. Let's go, he said just as the cell opened, and he stayed back to let Laurel and Peter get out first, and punched the first inmate, sending him flying back into his cellmates, and they all fell. As Nathan ran over and grabbed Laurel's hand and led her and Peter away, before he saw a door while guards with shields were coming. Come on, Nathan said, leading Laurel and Peter to safety before he was in the back of the head with an aluminum bat by Ankov, who grabbed Laurel and threw her into a fence before he knocked her to the ground and began to strangle her. Nathan shook the cobwebs from his head, before he saw Laurel looking at him as she was being strangled, and quickly he sprang up, grabbed Ankov by the back of his shirt, and flung him back, sending him through the gated fence. Laurel coughed as she got up and saw Nathan unsheath a kunai as he walked up to Ankov, who was clutching his head. Quickly she ran up and grabbed his arm and flinched when she saw him look at her, and gasped as his Kyuubi eyes bored into her. Let's go, she said, causing Nathan to look at her before he looked back to Ankov, and slowly nodded before they looked up when the guards entered. Open up the generator area. Ms. Lance, stay back. Area secured. The guards chattered as Laurel turned to see Nathan gone, while the guards took Peter, who didn't put up a fight. Later, Laurel was outside the prison when she saw her dad. Laurel. Sweetie. What are you? I'm all right, Laurel said, hugging her dad. You sure? Quentin asked, getting a nod from his daughter. I'm sorry about what I said to you, Laurel said. You were right. Brodeur's bodyguard confessed to Camille Declan's murder. We got the wrong guy. But listen to me. I'm right too, about him. He's dangerous. He's outside the law, Quentin said as Laurel only nodded. I'm sorry, she said, causing Quentin to nod before he placed his jacket over her. Let's get you home, sweetie. How did he get into that prison anyway, huh? A grown man in an outfit, that kind of stands out a little, doesn't it? I don't know, Laurel said before she got into the car, and sat back but looked out the window and saw Nathan standing on the rooftop looking at her, before he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Later. Okay, Kelton said as he typed at his computer as Quentin and Hilton sat with him. Here's the security footage from the Exchange building shooting, but I've already swept through it. Well, now you're gonna do it again, Quentin said, irritated. Look, when you went through it before, you were looking for a guy in a black leather hood, right? Yeah, what do you want me to look for now, a guy in a pink tutu? Kelton asked sarcastically, and the two cops looked at him unamused. Just look for anything out of the ordinary, Quentin ordered. Sighing, Kelton did as he and Hilton exchanged exasperated looks. However, while they did, Quentin saw something. Whoa, wait, go back. 10 seconds, Quentin ordered. Bewildered, Kelton did as he asked. The footage rewound to show Nathan Queen kneeling on the floor of a staircase, holding a duffel bag. Hilton and Kelton looked on in confusion as Quentin started to grin. Play that again, Quentin ordered. Queen Mansion, same time. Nathan walked into the sitting room to see Laurel there. Surprised, Nathan walked over to her. Hey, what are you doing here? Nathan asked, confused. I wanted to see that you were okay after last night, Laurel said, and Nathan nodded. I'm fine, Nathan said blankly, and she nodded, although she didn't look like she believed him. Nate, I know it can't have been easy for you while you were away, but you can talk to me if you want, Laurel said carefully. I appreciate that, Laurel, but I have to handle this on my own before I can talk about it, Nathan assured her, and she smiled slightly. The thing about having people who care about you is that you don't have to. The people who love you are willing to share that burden with you, Laurel told him. Suddenly, the front door burst open and the two whirled around to see Quentin and several other cops walking in. You can't just barge in here, Walter protested as he got in Quentin's path. Yeah? I got a gun and a badge that says different, Quentin said arrogantly before moving past Walter. What the hell is going on here? Nathan demanded as Quentin and the cops approached him. Dad? Laurel asked, surprised this was happening, and his eyes flashed as he saw her there before moving over to Nathan. Nathaniel Queen, Quentin said as, to Moira and Walter's shock. The police began putting Nathan in handcuffs. You are under arrest for suspicion of obstruction of justice, aggravated assault. Dad, Laurel shouted but ignored her. Acting as a vigilante, have you lost your mind? Nathan demanded. And murder. Quentin finished, a victorious, vindictive look in his eyes. Quentin and Hilton grabbed Nathan and began leading him out of the room. Walter got out his phone and began dialing as Moira watched in shock, while Laurel and Thea exchanged a look, wondering how this would go differently this time. Nobody saw Nathan's dark smirk, as if everything was going exactly as he planned it. Morning, Detective, Nathan said as he sat across from Quentin in the integration room. You hate me. I get that, but that doesn't make me a murderer. No, the security footage from the Unidac auction does that pretty well. Quentin sneered. And as I said, after the shooting, I was with my family the whole time, so that obviously is not me. Nathan gave Quentin a pointed look. And what about harassing Adam Hunt? That just happened to take place across the street from your little homecoming bash? Quentin sneered. These are merely coincidences, Nathan said with a mocking smile. No, when they pile up like that, it becomes evidence. Quentin sneered. Somebody with your conditions really should be more careful about throwing accusations like that, Detective. You believe just because you have a few instances that might connect me to this hood character that it's viable grounds to arrest me? Don't kid yourself. You've been transferring your hatred for my brother onto me ever since I got back, and now you see an opportunity to punish Oliver by punishing me. Nathan mocked Quentin as the door opened and an officer peeked his head in. His parents are here, the officer said. Tell him to wait, Quentin said dismissively. I want to see my son, Moira shouted before bursting into the room, Walter not far behind her. I'm in the middle of an integration, Quentin protested. "Detective Lance, I know you hate my family, but I had no idea you would go so far as to arrest my son without any grounds whatsoever." Moira shouted. "I have very solid grounds," Quentin sneered as he stood up. "I have plenty of evidence, which you can present to Mr. Queen's attorney when he gets here." Walter cut in smoothly. "Until then, this integration is over, Detective." "Sure," Quentin said after a moment, gathering his things. "You have 15 minutes. Nathan closed his eyes as Quentin walked out before Moira and Walter turned to him. "Detective Lance appears to be on some personal vendetta against you," Walter noted. "He is. He blames Oliver for the death of his daughter, and since he can't go after my brother, he's transferring his hatred onto me," Nathan said, and there was silence. "He also thinks I dress up and shoot people with arrows. The important thing is not to say anything until your attorney gets here," Walter advised. "Fine, I want Laurel," Nathan said, and the two scoffed. "Nathan, I don't think your brother's ex-girlfriend can be counted on to be objective," Moira snapped. "She knows me better than anyone. She knows that I can never be this guy." "Walter, you say Lance has a vendetta?" Nathan asked. "Yes," Walter confirmed. "Well, I think Laurel can get him off it. He raised her to do the right thing, which includes representing an innocent man." "So Mom," Nathan looked imploringly at Moira, "please. CNRI. Afternoon. Laurel." Laurel looked up at the expected call. "I know this is. I was there, remember?" Laurel pointed out, and Moira flushed as she did recall that. "Is he okay?" "At the moment. I'm here on his behalf," Moira said, and Laurel raised an eyebrow, appearing confused. "He wants you to represent him." "I'm not sure that's appropriate," Laurel said, appearing hesitant, since she did not want to be accused of a conflict of interest. "I know it's unfair to ask, but, to be frank, I am desperate. He says if you won't represent him, that he doesn't want any attorney," Moira said, and Laurel was shocked. "That's suicide, he can't do that," Laurel said, honestly horrified. "I know, that's why I'm here. I know it's unfair to ask, given the circumstances, but, please. I am begging you. I can't lose him. Not again," Moira said. "My own issues aside, he's my friend. I care about him and I can't let him do this. So, yes, I will represent him," Laurel said, and Moira sighed in relief. "Thank you." A grateful Moira hugged her. Starling City Police Department. An hour later, Laurel came to Nathan in the interrogation room. "Hey, Laurel," Nathan greeted. "Hey to yourself, Nate," Laurel said. "This is almost like old times, except now, I'm the one getting you out of jail." "Well, it's not exactly the same as 5 years ago. I'm actually not guilty this time," Nathan said with honest confidence. Laurel sat down sighing, then reached out and grasped Nathan's hand tenderly, saying, "I'm sorry about all this. I really don't know what my father is thinking. He's thinking that he can use me to punish Oliver." Upon seeing Laurel's confused expression, he elaborated, "Quentin hates Oliver for dragging Sarah onto the Queen's gambit. Since Oliver is dead, he is taking his vendetta out on me. And I'm not the only one. Thea won't talk about it, but I know he's harassed her before." Laurel looked at him in the eyes, still holding his hand as she said, "Nate, I believe you and I want to help you. But I'm going to need proof of what you're saying to prove to the court that your word is legitimate." Nathan pulled back and pulled out a flash drive, and gave it to her. "This has everything I have compiled on your father. If that bloody island did one good thing for me, it was giving me good survival instincts. I knew from the first insult he thrw my way, the moment your father got a chance, he'd try something. I trust you, Laurel, and personally, I know you could convince them without this, but if you want to have it just in case, then here." He finished as he handed it to her. Starling City Courthouse. The next day at noon. "Mr. Queen, where's your attorney?" the judge asked, noticing the vacant seat next to Nathan. "Right here, Your Honor." Laurel entered, feeling her father's stunned eyes as she took her place by Nathan's right. "Dinah Laurel Lance, Your Honor." "Welcome, Ms. Lance." "Mr. Queen, how do you plead?" the judge asked. "I'm not guilty, Your Honor," Nathan said, and she nodded. "Very well, now on to the subject of bail," the judge began. "Your Honor," D.A. Spencer interrupted as she stood, "the Queen family owns 2 private jets. And no amount of bail can promise Mr. Queen stays put." "Well then I guess it's a good thing that the people's case is so circumstantial," Laurel interrupted as she got to her feet. "Your Honor, I would prefer not to waste anyone's time. You will be dismissing all the charges against my client." "And why is that?" the judge raised an eyebrow. Because honestly, it is laughable how far this case has gotten, if you can even call it that, Laurel announced boldly as several people turned to her in shock. This is not about justice or the law. This is about satisfying one man's petty vendetta. Could you elaborate, Ms. Lance? The judge asked in confusion. Gladly. The arresting officer, Quentin Lance, has a vendetta against my client that goes back 5 years. He blames Mr. Queen for the death of his youngest daughter. When Mr. Queen was presumed dead, he took his anger out on Mr. Queen's family. 2 years ago, there was a very public, drunken altercation between Detective Lance and my client's younger sister Thea Queen, who was only 15 at the time, where the good detective unleashed a slur of verbal insults on her. There were over 100 witnesses, so I'm sure finding proof isn't that difficult. And now that's back, Detective Lance is able to focus all his anger on Mr. Queen. Less than 2 months ago, mere days after my client returned home, Detective Lance nearly attacked my client in front of multiple witnesses, myself included. He had to be dragged away from the scene by his partner, and was heard saying, "Did you even try to save her?" But there's more than that, Laurel said as Quentin stared at betrayal and anger filling his eyes. He arrested my client yesterday without a warrant, breaking several police protocols. And he has a history of being an alcoholic. Lord knows how many times I have had to pick him up from the bar at night. In case I have not yet convinced you yet of my client's innocence, I have this to prove it. Laurel took out the flash drive and inserted it into an audio speaker, and everyone was suddenly hearing the audio on it. Yeah, Lance nodded before he glared at Nathan. It's funny, isn't it? 1 day back and somebody's gunning for you. Aren't you popular? It's both a gift and a curse. Nathan shrugged nonchalantly. Lance made to shout at Nathan, but Moira spoke. Were you able to identify the men? Scrubbed identities. Untraceable weapons. These were pros. Lance's partner said. Yeah, they figured you'd pay a king's ransom to get your boy back. Or a queen's ransom, as it were. After all, a parent would do anything to keep their child safe. Lance said snarkingly as he glared at Nathan. Are you all right, Mr. Lance? Nathan asked, looking the man in the eye. Maybe you shouldn't be the one leading this case, since it seems you wouldn't give a rat's ass if I would have died today. You listen here, you son. Quentin, Lance's partner hissed, stopping his partner. Mr. Lance, you seem to share the habit of projecting your anger onto me, when I've done nothing wrong to your family. Oliver took Sarah onto the yacht, not me. Is your anger justified? Without a shadow of doubt it is, but the man you're angry at is dead. So get the hell out of my house and go do your job. Laurel paused to make an announcement. This audio was from right after my client was first kidnapped. This next one is from the incident at the club. Who's Adam Hunt? Nathan asked. A millionaire bottom feeder. I'm surprised you aren't friends. Well, I am a friendly guy, but I have no new friends seeing as I've been out of town for a while. Nathan shrugged as Tommy chuckled. Yeah, well, he just got attacked by the guy with the hood. The guy that saved your ass the other day. Quentin said, still glaring at Nathan. Really, did you catch him? Nathan asked, only for Quentin to glare. Shame, I would really like to speak with him. Did you even try to save her? Quentin asked, stepping into Nathan's face. Okay, let's go, partner. Quentin's partner said, starting to pull him away. Did you even try to save my daughter? Quentin asked. I guess you'll never know. Nathan said, causing Quentin to try to rush him, but his partner and other officer pulled him away. Sarah wouldn't want this. Let's go, his partner said. Laurel shut it off and continued. Now, there is no actual evidence linking my client to the vigilante except one coincidence from his second day back in this video. This is not about the law or justice. This is about the fact that Detective Lance saw an opportunity to get revenge on the man he sees as his daughter's killer and took it. The fact we are even here is, to be blunt, laughable. I move to dismiss all charges. Your Honor, the evidence, as circumstantial as the evidence is, it does raise some alarms, the prosecutor protested. Evidence supplied by a vengeful alcoholic. Laurel pointed out, and Quentin stared at her in disbelief. The prosecution has 48 hours to come up with reasonable, non-circumstantial evidence, the judge said after a moment, evidence not touched by Quentin Lance. If not, then Ms. Lance, your motion to have all charges dismissed will be passed. The judge slammed the hammer down. Your Honor, he's a flight risk. The prosecutor protested. Then minimize the risk. The defendant is willing to submit to home confinement and electronic monitoring through the wearing of a UKG-45 administrated ankle device. Laurel said, and Nathan frowned. No, he wouldn't. Nathan protested, and Laurel shot him a look. Yes, he would. Laurel said with a smile that said, talk and I'll kill you, so Nathan wisely decided to shut up. Sold. The judge happily slammed down the hammer, to Spencer's dismay, and Laurel had to suppress the smirk forming. Laurel, Nathan said as she began gathering her things, I'm not happy about the ankle monitor, but, thank you. You were either going to have a stay in jail or be under house arrest. Besides, knowing you, I'm sure you already have a plan to get out of this. Laurel picked up her suitcase and looked him square in the eyes. You just have to make some adjustments to make it work. And you don't really need to thank me. You're my friend, of course I'd help you out. Laurel then walked out of the courtroom, refusing to meet her father's eyes. Queen Mansion. Later in the afternoon. Mom, it's not that bad. Nathan assured Moira as the two of them, along with Tommy, Thea, and Walter, watched as the ankle monitor was attached to Nathan's leg. Okay, the cop said as the device was set, this monitor has a direct line into the precinct. Stay on the property, you're golden. Any questions? Yeah, I am having a sizable get-together tomorrow evening, and there is a better than small chance it spills into the outdoor pool. Nathan said, causing Moira and Walter to look at him incredulously. Well, that's fine. As long as you stay on pavement, you're golden. You step up on the grass, we're sending a SWAT team to forcibly subdue you. The cop warned him. Thank you, officer. Walter said as he began to lead the cop out. A sizable get-together? Moira asked incredulously, her voice shaking with anger. I'm confined to this house for the foreseeable future. Might as well make the most of it, Nathan said, and Moira glowered at him. And this party is gonna be themed. I was thinking, prison? Ah, Burning Man meets Shawshank Redemption, and the invite says, come before Nathaniel Queen gets off. Nathaniel, perhaps a party isn't a good idea, considering the circumstances. Walter tried to reason as he walked back into the room. I disagree, Tommy, and they looked over at him. The party will let people know Nate isn't worried in the slightest about this. And it will infuriate the police by making them look like ideas any more than Laurel already did. And people who are angry make mistakes. See, Tommy gets it. Nathan exclaimed as they high-fived. Laurel's apartment. Same time. How could you do that to me? Quentin demanded as he stormed into Laurel's apartment. You were trying to send somebody I care about to jail for a crime he did not commit. I did what any competent lawyer and friend would have done in my position. Laurel said coolly. You are defending the man who murdered your sister. Quentin shouted. Did he put a gun to Sarah's head? Did he force her into that boat? Laurel demanded. What are you saying? Quentin sneered. That neither Nathan or Oliver forced her to do anything. Sarah made a choice. None of them could have known what that choice would bring, Laurel said, thinking on what had happened as a result. Sarah is not the saint you prefer to remember her as. She was selfish, spoiled, and cared only about herself. Nathan and Oliver are not the reason she died, and he is not this vigilante. You know what? I don't need this. Quentin sneered as he turned and stormed out, leaving Laurel staring after him. Queen Mansion. Later in the afternoon. You know, when I signed on for this, I didn't think you'd get caught so soon. Lila said as she closed Nathan's bedroom door. Yeah, Nathan drawled sarcastically as he looked down at his laptop. I'm not sure how I could have possibly missed that security tape. You let yourself get caught? Lila asked in surprise. I returned to Starling City. A few days later the vigilante shows up. Sooner or later, someone was gonna connect the dots. Nathan told her. Okay, well, what part of your plan is gonna get you to avoid going to prison for the rest of your life? Lila asked. There's more to it, but the mission comes first. Nathan as he flipped the laptop around to show Lila a picture of a gray-haired Caucasian man, Justin Claiborne. Who's he? Lila asked, confused. The owner of Claiborne Pharmaceuticals, which recently acquired the rights to dicloserol, which fights a particular strain of tuberculosis, which recently had an outbreak in Lamb Valley. Nathan told her. Let me hazard a guess. As soon as the outbreak started, prices were inflated? Lila said, and Nathan nodded. Prices for dicloserol went from $10 to $1,000 literally overnight. The people in Lamb Valley, they're working class, low income. They can't afford this, Nathan told her. And what do you plan to do about this while under house arrest? Lila inquired. If you go back to my base, you understand just how I already have that covered. I'm gonna find out where Claiborne goes and who he meets with tonight. I'm gonna need you to run the computers for me tonight. Nathan ordered and Lila nodded. Afternoon. Hey, you okay? All this stuff, it's gonna be fine, I promise. Nathan said as he sat down across from his sister. Did you do this stuff Detective Lance says you did? Thea asked as she looked her brother in the eye. Of course not, Nathan said immediately. If you say so, I believe you. But, if you did, that would be okay too. Thea said. Really? Nathan asked, genuinely surprised. The vigilante, his methods are extreme, but he's done more good than the cops have all year. I may not like it, but he's a necessary evil, I say. Thea said, unknowingly planting a seed in her brother's mind. Maybe, Nathan said, careful not to show how much his sister's acceptance meant to him. Queen Mansion. Night. If you think this is what prison is like, you're in for a rude awakening. Lila told Nathan as they walked through the party, let's go somewhere private. Nathan nodded and the two walked up to Nathan's room. Your guy followed Claiborne to his factory. Apparently, there's supposed to be a big meeting there in a few hours. Lila said and Nathan nodded. The perfect time for the arrow to show up. Nathan said and Lila raised an eyebrow. Nathan, you can't leave this house. Lila pointed out. It doesn't have to be, this, me in the hood. Nathan said giving Lila a look. I'm not following, Nate, Lila said. The guy from last night in my costume was me. Nathan said, causing Lila to be more confused. May I show you something? With Lila's permission, Nate created a single clone of himself, causing him to drop to his knees, panting as he did since he already had one running around. How? Lila asked. Let's just say it's a little trick I picked up after China. Nathan said as he and his clone refused. The guy under the hood is a clone of me. Listen Lila, Nathan coming closer. Out of everyone in Argus, I like you the most. I would prefer it if this did not reach Amanda's ears. Lila nodded and assured him. Well, my job was to report on how you were doing and make sure you didn't become a threat to innocent people of Starling, so as long as that remains true, I can try to keep this quiet. In the meantime, I have a meeting to help bust up. Lila said before she turned and walked out. Later, Nathan was downstairs, getting a drink, when he turned around to see Laurel. Do we have a legal meeting, because I have friends over? Nathan joked and she shot him an unamused look as she reached him. Can we talk, privately? Laurel asked. You are not actually the first person to say that to me. Nathan joked before he saw the angry look on her face. The first was Lila. Just bodyguard-related stuff. Shaking her head in exasperation, Laurel followed Nathan up to his room. Look, Laurel said as she turned around to face him. I would just like to apologize for my father's behavior the last few days. You don't have to apologize for him. Nathan told her. It wasn't just Sarah, Nate. Laurel said and he raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Nathan asked clueless. After Sarah died, my father threw himself into his work. I think that's why I'm an attorney. He ran to the law and I followed. But my mother couldn't. So she left us, Laurel said and saw Nathan look down. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty or to try and defend him. I just want you to understand. Why don't you hate me? You should. I failed her. Nathan asked since he still blamed himself for not saving Sarah during his second year. I did, Laurel admitted. Hate Oliver, I mean, for so long I did. But I realized that Sarah made a choice. Oliver didn't force her to do anything, that was Sarah's choice. You need to stop blaming yourself for Ollie and Sarah dying. Whatever debt you owed me or my father, I think you've more than paid it with all that you've been through. At some point during their talk, Laurel had put a hand on the side of Nathan's face. Neither was sure who moved first, but they were suddenly kissing fiercely. Nathan ran a hand through her dark hair as Laurel wrapped her arms around her neck. She wrapped her legs around his waist and he carried them over to his bed. Starling City. While the real Nathan was having fun, Justin Claiborne was holding a meeting when suddenly, the lights all turned out. They all looked around in confusion before he was there. The arrow jumped down, slugged on security guard, took his gun, and it was on. He fired 3 times, killing most of the guards as Claiborne's guests fled. The arrow knocked the gun out of the last guard's hand and struck him across the face with his bow, knocking him out as the gun fired. It hit a gas tank before them, causing a small explosion, and Claiborne backed up in fear, the explosion making the arrow appear extremely terrifying. Justin Claiborne, you have failed this city. The arrow said in a disguised voice as he stalked over to him. I think you got the wrong guy, pal. My company only makes drugs that help people. Claiborne stammered, trying to weasel his way out of this. And what about the people in Lamb Valley? The Arrow challenged. It's not my problem, some people can't afford it. Claiborne told him. Snarling, the Arrow slugged him. Not hard enough to knock out, but enough to cause a lot of pain. Claiborne went down, crying out as he felt his bruised jaw. He looked up and paled as he saw the barrel of a gun aimed at him. Your days of holding this city hostage are over. Is that in any way unclear? The Arrow growled. Okay, I get it, he said fearfully. The Arrow tossed the gun away and started walking off. You have until 11 p.m. tomorrow to make this right. The Hood warned him as Claiborne stood up. Or what? Claiborne challenged, seeming to regain some of his bravo. Nathan whirled around, notched an arrow in his bow, and fired. It hit Claiborne in the shoulder, causing him to cry out in pain. The next one will go in your chest, the Arrow said before he turned and walked off. Queen Mansion, Nathan's room. Later, Laurel put on her shirt and the silent was penetrating as Nathan, fully clothed, sat on the bed next to her, the tension between them thick enough to cut with a knife. So, Laurel began, trying to find the words. I was not expecting that when I came here tonight. Can't say I was either, Nathan admitted. I'm sorry. For what? Laurel asked, confused. Nathan sighed. If I could go back and redo my whole life over again where you and Sarah are concerned, I would. I spent so much time chasing other girls like Oliver, that I didn't realize that I could have had something great if I had just gone after you first. And I'm sorry that I can't be the guy you deserve right now. Laurel looked at him sadly and asked him as she traced one of his scars with her finger. Scars she hadn't noticed until they were done having. Nate, what happened to you on that island? How did you get these scars? Flashback. Lien Yu. Nathan groaned awake to see that he was handcuffed being led to some encampment taking note of the weapons being unloaded, before he was shoved into a tent into a pole, while a man sat with a glass of ice and a soda. Please sit, you're making me feel rude. The man said as Nathan with a grunt sat down. I do apologize for my men's treatment of you, they're trained to view any stranger as hostile. The man said, opening the soda and pouring it into the glass slowly as he watched Nathan. I'm Edward Fires, by the way, and you are? I'm Nathan Queen, I've been shipwrecked here. I don't know how long. Interesting, let's talk, shall we, Nathaniel? About what? Nathan asked. Well, for starters, Fires reached back and pulled out a photo of Yao Fei. This gentle man, do you know him? I've never seen him a day in my life. Nathan said, causing Edward to frown. Who is he? You see, I've been nothing but polite, and in return you lie to my face. Edward saw it glaring at Nathan, who raised an eyebrow. Look, buddy, I just lost my father, brother, and best friend. Your men knocked me out after I buried my father, and brought me here. Whatever business you have with that guy is your own, not mine. Do you know what this island is called? I don't care, Nathan said. Lien Yu, it's Mandarin for purgatory, but I can make it feel like hell. Now I don't know why you're protecting him, but you're young, so that makes you foolish. You're going to tell me what I want to know. Edward saw it before he looked to the entrance. He's yours now. Nathan turned back to see a man in all black with half his mask being black and the other half being orange walk in. End flashback. Laurel, the truth, Nathan. Laurel said, causing Nathan to sigh. Few days after I made it to the island, I was tortured by the people already there. Nathan said, causing Laurel's eyes to widen in horror as Nathan got flashes of himself tied to a rafter as Wintergreen drove his sword across his chest as his old self cried out in pain. Why? Laurel asked. I don't know, they were apparently looking for someone, and thought I knew where he was. I'd be dead if it wasn't for a man named Yao Fei, another prisoner. He helped me get free. Nathan said before he looked to Laurel seriously. You can't tell anyone the truth. What, why not? There is a reason I don't talk about this with them, Laurel. I can't sleep, because every time I do I wake up to a nightmare about when I was tortured. I barely eat. I've been faking it the whole time so nobody suspects how screwed up I am. I don't want them to know, because the last thing I need is any more pity. Nathan said, letting his vulnerability show. Promise me. I promise. Laurel nodded, causing Nathan to nod slowly before she brought him into a hug. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. It wasn't your fault, Laurel, you have nothing to be sorry for. Nathan said before he pulled back and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Besides, I'm alive, that's all I care about. Nathan opened his mouth, an incredulous look on his face, but his phone rang. Digging it out, he saw it was Lila. Breaking away from Laurel slightly, Nathan answered. Arrow 1, Claiborne 0. Lila told him and Nathan nodded. Hang on, Nate said as someone knocked on the door. What? Mr. Queen, Malcolm's assassin on the other side of the door said, equipping his pistol with silencer. If you're entertaining guests upstairs, should I have any refreshments sent up here? Despite the tension, Laurel flushed. Nathan stood up, walked over to the door. No, we're about to head back down, Nathan said before putting the phone to his ear. Good job. Now get back here as soon as you can. Nathan hung up his phone and opened the door only to get a gun in his face. Nathan quickly grabbed the man's hand that was holding the gun and dragged him inside, managing to disarm him. However, the man was no slouch and quickly moved for the gun. Nathan tried to stop him, but it was apparent the man was skilled when he fought back. Help, somebody help, Laurel cried out, playing the part of the frightened girlfriend to a T. The two rolled off the couch as they struggled, Nathan pushing him off. Unfortunately, this put him in front of the gun, which he promptly grabbed. He stood up and took aim at Nathan only to get shot in the back twice. Quentin burst in, surveying the scene as he and Nathan stared at each other for a moment before Quentin spotted Laurel. Seeing the messed up bed, Quentin scowled before he looked away, holding his anger in check. Later, in the sitting room, Laurel stood in the corner, watching as her father talked on the phone while Nathan and Laurel sat on the couch. How do you know I was in trouble? Nathan asked. Because when you were fighting that guy, the ankle monitor broke. Quentin admitted sheepishly and Laurel rolled her eyes. Really, Dad? Laurel asked, annoyed as Moira and Walter burst in. Are you alright? Moira asked frantically. Mom, I'm fine, Nathan assured her, and she stood up, whirling on Quentin. This is on you. By accusing Nathan so publicly, you've made him a target. Quentin didn't say anything, knowing she was right. Have you any idea who attacked Nathan? Walter asked. Someone with a grudge against the Hood, obviously. We haven't identified him yet, Quentin said before he knelt down and began removing Nathan's ankle monitor. What are you doing? Nathan asked, seemingly confused. Just got a call from my lieutenant. Justin Claiborne, head of Claiborne Pharmaceuticals, was attacked by the Hood tonight. Multiple witnesses put him there. Quentin stood up and faced Moira. In light of that, all charges against your son have been dropped. I'm truly sorry for what's happened to your family, Quentin. Now, would you kindly get the hell out of my house? Moira told him, making it quite clear this was a command. Quentin looked over at Laurel, but her steely gaze let him know she wasn't going home with him tonight. Sighing internally, Quentin turned around and walked out of the sitting room. Mr. Lance, Quentin stopped as he heard Nathan call out, thank you. Quentin gave the barest of nods before he left. Next day, Queen's mansion, Nathan's room. Nathan was cleaning up his room when the door opened. He turned around to see Laurel walk in. Despite everything, he smiled. Hey, Nathan said as she walked over, closing the door behind him. Hey, I wanted to check in. I didn't think it was a good idea to stay last night, Laurel said, and Nathan shrugged. Not the first time I've been attacked in the last 5 years, Nathan said nonchalantly. There is something concerning about how easily you just said that, Laurel said dryly. Look, Nate, about last night, before all the craziness. As much as I wanted to happen again, it can't. Not right now anyway. Maybe one day, when I am ready for it, we could be together, but today is not that day. Nate, you don't have to keep me at a distance. The only reason you are is because you're afraid. And I get it, after spending so long alone in this darkness you've lived in, you're afraid of anything else. But I'm here. Laurel reached up and kissed him on the cheek. I'm just not ready yet, Laurel, Nate said. I understand, Laurel whispered in his ear before letting go and walking out, leaving him staring after her. CNRI. Later in the morning. What are you doing here, Dad? Laurel sighed as she saw her father waiting for her at her desk. How long have you been screwing him? Since he got back? Quentin demanded angrily, and Laurel scowled. I'm a grown woman, I don't need to justify myself to you. But for your information, nothing happened between Nate and me until last night. And it may never happen again, so take that as you will. Now get out, Laurel said, having had enough. Quentin stared at her with an unreadable expression on his face before he walked out. SCPD. Afternoon. You wanted to see me, Frank? Quentin asked as he opened the door to Pike's office. Take a seat, Lance. Pike growled, and Quentin sat down in the chair offered to him. Look, I know, I messed up. Quentin said, and Pike cut him off. That's putting it lightly. We are now the laughing stock of the city. Did you know Moira Queen threatened legal action against us? Nathaniel Queen, the guy you just tried to send to jail for murder, is the one who talked her down. But she wanted consequences, and I agree. For the next month, you are on desk duty. Pike told him, and Quentin started. Frank, and you are now sentenced to court-mandated therapy. No arguments, no loopholes, this is the bed you made. Now sleep in it. Pike stood up and walked out, leaving Quentin to pick up the shattered pieces of his life. Arrow Lair. Night. You seem unusually tense, Lila noted as Nathan worked out his frustrations on the training dummy. I'm pissed off, Nathan said as he punched the training dummy so hard it snapped in half. He picked up the towel and threw it over his shoulder. So, did Claiborne comply? 1. No, time's up, Lila said, and Nathan moved off to leave. Nathan. I hacked onto his private computer. Nathan turned to Lila. Claiborne created this epidemic. He is part of the AK Desmond group. They are black marketers who specialize in bioweapons. What do you think they've been working on? Nathan demanded. Weaponized tuberculosis. Lila realized, and Nathan nodded. He had his chance, Lila. Nathan said firmly as he walked out. Justin Claiborne's home. Later, 2 arrows were shot at the building. One killed the power by hitting the fuse box, the other hit the side of the building and jammed all radio signals. Nate burst into the building, having found it due to the tracer his clone had managed to plant on Claiborne's car, and immediately saw a guard. Acting quickly, he drew an arrow, notched it, and fired. It hit the guard in the forehead. The guard fell to the floor, dead, as another one came of a door and rushed Nate. He grabbed him with one arm and threw him through a glass wall. As he sat up, dazed, Nate walked over, pulling out a shuriken and flicking it towards the guy, causing his 6-bladed shuriken to embed itself in the guard's jugular. Nate then walked past the 2 dead guards and saw Claiborne talking to a guard. Kill that Robin Hood son of a bitch, Claiborne ordered before turning and running like the coward he was. The guard pulled a gun, but Nathan fired an arrow. Said black and red arrow piercing the guard in the subclavian artery, causing him to drop his gun as he bled out. As he went down, Nathan stalked past him, his target vision only on Claiborne. He followed Claiborne's trail, seeing it led up an escalator. Multiple guards were coming down, and Nate notched 2 arrows, firing them and hitting 2 of them in the larynx, taking them out. Nate rushed up the other side, holstering his bow, whilst unsheathing his sword, decapitating 2 more guards, letting their corpses fall down the escalator stairs. Surrounded by 3 guards, he stabbed a guard in the heart before throwing the corpse down and stabbing the other 2 in the hearts and doing the same to them. His path cleared, Nate continued on his journey. Nathan found himself on the roof. Claiborne was with 2 guards, running but having nowhere to run to. Nathan resheathed his sword, took out his bow and drew 2 arrows and fired, getting the 2 guards in the back, killing them instantly. As they fell dead, Claiborne turned around, fear written across his face. Don't bother trying to run. No one's coming to save you, Nathan said in voice modulator. You gonna tell me again I failed this city? Claiborne mocked. You infected the people in Lamb Valley with tuberculosis to turn a profit. He snarled. You wanna make this city great again, this is how. With business, Claiborne said, reminding Nathan of General Shreve from China in his 3rd year with his Alpha Omega bioweapon, and Konstantin Kovar from the second half of his 4th year away with his Red Death. You are sentencing innocent people to death. Nate snarled, feeling his rage grow unchecked. Nobody cares about those people. I'm just thinning the herd. Claiborne justified, not realizing he had pushed Nathan over his limit. So am I. You just lost your right to live. Nathan snarled. 2. Rushing forward, Nathan kicked Claiborne onto his back. Swiftly taking out 2 arrows, he stabbed Justin's hands, pinning him to the roof. He duct-taped Justin's mouth shut, then stabbed his feet with arrows. Don't worry, I didn't pierce any major arteries, but that's the least of your problems. Nathan growled as he ripped Justin's upper body clothes off and pulled a kunai. I was going to kill you quickly, but now you've pissed me off. You're going to die, Claiborne, but not before I make you suffer for every single person you infected. With that, Nathan took his kunai and began flaying the skin off of Claiborne, his screams muffled by the duct tape on his mouth. So let's see how long you last. The following morning the police arrived at Claiborne's home to find his guards slaughtered, and they found Clayburn on the roof. His body still pinned to the floor, but all the skin from his waist to his head was found floating in his pool. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.